Good evening, Baton Rouge and East Baton Rouge Parish. My name is Darius Lance. I proudly serve as the president of the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board, and we welcome you to tonight's Committee of the Whole meeting this Thursday, October 5th, 2023. We will begin our meeting with the invocation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. The invocation will be led by School Board Member Nathan Russ, with the Pledge of Allegiance followed by School Board Member Cliff Lewis. You have the floor.
Thank you. Please stand and bow your heads with me. Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for rain. We thank you for keeping our families and our children safe, and that you will continue to do so. We pray that this meeting will serve your will and your purpose and to the education of our community. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Now I know I don't look like Vice President Carla Powell Lewis, but I will be filling in for her this afternoon until she makes it to the meeting. She is coming here from work from Zachary, and as soon as she gets here, I will turn the meeting over. Until that time, however, Madam Secretary, please do the roll call and please call for the, I was going to say call for the vote, the call of order. Right. Trying to get us out of here quick before she gets here.
District 2, President Lannis.
Present.
District 3, Vice President Powell Lewis. District 1, Mr. Blue.
Here.
District 4, Ms. Stewart.
Present.
District 5, Mr. Lewis.
Present.
District 6, Mr. Russ.
Present.
District 7, Mr. Godey.
Here.
District 8, Ms. Chatelaine.
Present.
District 9, Mr. Martin.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Ms. Chatelaine has a nice ring to it. Okay, moving right along. We'll go right into our first order of business, which is item B, items for consideration. Item B1, grant the Joe Barrow Foundation Do Good. This is a consideration of a request for the acceptance of the Joe Barrow Foundation's Do Good grant in the amount of $14,856 for tutoring support at Twin Oaks Elementary, targeting 3rd grade and 4th grade students' strategic alignment, student achievement. Can I get a motion? Moved by School Board Patrick Martin, seconded by School Board Member Cliff Lewis. Okay, seeing no names in the queue at this time, I'll give my board members a few moments in case anybody wants to hop in. Seeing no names in the queue at this time, I will now go to our public to see if anybody would like to speak on this matter. Do we have anybody here from Joe Barrow Foundation? Okay. Okay, this time now we'll come back to our board. Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Moving right along, our next item for consideration is item B2. grant, Louisiana Department of Education, CCAP B3. Consideration of a request for the acceptance of a 2023-2024 Louisiana Department of Education CCAP B3 grant in the amount of $4,353,360 to expand access to early childhood seats for infants to 3 years old. Strategic alignment, student achievement. Can I get a motion? Moved by School Board Member Mike Gode, seconded by School Board Member Shoshone Stewart. Okay, seeing no names in the queue this time, I'll give my board colleagues a moment. All right, I see School Board Member Patrick Martin. I'm sorry. I was about to say Patrick Lewis. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Patrick Martin is in the queue. You have it.
It's a compliment to one of us, insult to the other. I'm not sure which. No, I was just curious where, I'm not sure if I saw in the materials where these seats are going to be, and I wanted to know if there are any infrastructure construction requirements to go along with any of this.
Hold on, Board Member Martin. Dr. Griffin, can you come on up? No, I'm good.
Good evening. Actually, the next item will have the MOUs where we propose all of the places to be. There will be no capital improvements needed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Is that all your questions? Yes, sir. Moving right along. School Board Member Cliff Lewis, you're now in the queue.
Yeah,
Almost.
especially when you saw my
Gotta be
name.
faster than that for coach.
And you explained this to me a couple months ago. Under the methodology for measuring expected outcomes, student progress will be measured by the goals student assessment. Explain to me again about the goals student assessment. How does that work?
Yes, sir. So LDOE has picked an assessment by which to measure the development of all infant to pre-K 4-year-old students. So there is no other measurement that goes all the way down to infancy. So this was a way to kind of standardize the same measurement tools that we use for all ages. And so everyone who accepts public funding, so any district in the state who accepts public funding has to use the GOAL tool. And quarterly, the teachers will take observations. They'll use student work to determine how students are doing at that point in time. It's called a checkpoint. At the end of the year, we measure their progress from the beginning of the year to the last checkpoint, which happens in May.
Okay, so there's no pre-testing. It's just
So there is a form of pre-testing that we use in our district. We use the Brigance test, as well as we use a lot of our Tier 1 curriculum assessments as like a pre-test of what they know before they start the program. The first checkpoint for gold, however, across the state is October 31st. So right now, teachers are finalizing data, and we'll be able to roll up that data about the first or second week in November, and then we report it to accountability to roll out to the district.
okay. So we've got about 60 days.
60 days to get
assessed.
before you get the first, about 40 days before you get the first. Yes, sir.
And Board Member Lewis, gold is used all across the country. So.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Coach. Next in the queue, we have School Board Member Mark Ballou.
Real quick, this is only a one-year grant?
Yes, sir. So this is always a one-year grant that could be renewed every year. So we've actually been getting the Burbs to 3 Seats grants for about 3 or 4 years. Every year they say it may be the only year. So we have to wait until the funding is determined at the state level.
All right, thank you.
Can I add to that, Mr. Ballou, just as you're aware, because we are so aggressive about early childhood across the country, working directly with the Louisiana Department of Education and State Superintendent, we're in a good space where we can continue to expand seats. One of the things we did share with them was we need continued support for that, as you know, because our budget can't hold that by itself.
Okay, thank you, School Board Member Ballou. Would that be all? Okay, and I'll just quickly enter. I just want to say my hat goes off to you and your team. This is phenomenal. Almost $5 million. This is the type of information that our community needs to see, and the population of students that we're serving is phenomenal.
Yes, sir.
And the reason why I say this is because something that was recently approved to pass this summer was that if a child is not on grade level, they cannot read by the time they're in 3rd grade. They're going to be held back. So having this type of initiative is going to help us to prepare ourselves in the beginning rather than on the back end. So I just, again, my kudos to you and your team, and thank you all for applying.
Thank you, and thank you for your forward thinking on the board, because we all say in our department, pre-K is prevention.
You may now go sit.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing all the names in the queue at this time, we'll now turn to our community as a whole for public comment. All right, Madam Secretary, no comment cards. If there's anyone in the room right now that would like to make a comment, please make your way into the atrium, grab a comment card, fill out the information, give it to Madam Secretary. She'll be sure that I'll get it, and I'll be sure to call on you. Okay, looks like we have a card right now. You speaking on this item? Okay, no problem. Okay, this time, seeing no name, seeing no cue cards, we will now come back to our board. Seeing no names in the queue, Madam Secretary, please call for the vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Moving right along, the next item is item B3, Memorandum of Understanding for Early Childhood. Consideration of a request for the approval of a Memorandum of Understanding with selected Type 3 early learning centers to expand seats for infants to age 3 children with Child Care Assistance Program, CCAP, Birth to 3 grant. Strategic alignment, student achievement, funding source, CCAP B3, Louisiana State General Funds. Can I get a motion? Moved by School Board Member Patrick Martin, seconded by School Board Member Nathan Rust. Okay. I see we have one name inside of the queue. School Board Member Patrick Martin, you are in the queue.
I'm sure I know the answer to this question, but I just want to confirm, sorry to make you walk off. Why don't we need to get them a table closer to here.
Right.
Like we need a hot seat,
Yes.
right? So they can just go back.
A hot mic.
until, no, we don't like hot mics.
Oh, right.
No. I know, I just felt compelled to ask this. When these students are enrolling in these pre-K programs which are all held at these other sites, right, the daycare centers and whatnot, we are getting their identification information and putting this in there so that 4 years from now, we can say, here's the scores of third grade reading for those who participated in pre-K and who didn't, correct?
Yes, sir, and that's why the gold system is important. That gold system follows them all the way through.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, School Board Member Martin. Next, we have School Board Member Cliff Lewis in the queue.
Hey, Ms. Griffin.
Hey.
I guess my real concern is we know all these kids are going to come in at different places.
Yes, sir.
So we may have someone just on the cusp of being ready, but we may have a child that's not even ready for pre-K.
Mm-hmm.
Age-wise, they may be ready,
Right.
but cognitively they may. So how do we deal with that?
Right. So that is not just germane to early childhood. Our teachers in our K-12 are dealing with this every day, and that's why we have to use ability grouping. We look at accommodations. What can we do? As a classroom teacher, I had to look at the test scores and all the observational information that I had when they came in, and I had to group them accordingly. When we're looking at pre-K, it's discovery-based learning, so that's from infancy all the way up. So we just have to look at what each child needs and individually provide those needs. That's what all teachers do, regardless of their level.
So that we will be able to separate them based on where they are.
Yes, sir. We will provide accommodations for each of their individual academic needs.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Coach, can I add one more thing to what Doc's saying? The key for early childhood is to make sure that we know kids get to a certain level. We can guarantee that through the early childhood program before they hit kindergarten. What ends up happening is if a family has resources and the child's unable to do things, they can have resources to help them catch up, right? But most of our families, as you know, we have 75% district poverty. So most families are not able to have that same access, and so that's why we push so hard to get kids into their early childhood. So we can guarantee when you go into our early childhood, if you go with Fidelity, attend every day, and we have almost a 90+% attendance rate, those kids, we know by the time they get to ages 3, 4, we can get them to read before they even hit kindergarten. And that's our strategy long term.
And that's really good, especially going into elementary school. But the data that we've seen shows that after elementary school, these kids do what?
But I think the more that we work on the Tier 1 high-quality programming,
Yes.
which is getting better and better each year, you're going to see those results start to level out a little bit, and then we're going to really surpass it. The interesting thing is after this October checkpoint data that's going to come out, you're actually going to be able to see the data from the first class that started in our micro centers 2 years ago. So because they are actually in kindergarten now. So I'm interested to share that data with you as we roll it up, but I'm very excited about the results.
And remember, we never invested in early child like we're doing now. So in the last 2 years, so you should definitely see progression happen.
Well, I trust you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Coach, does this include your questions? Yes, sir. Thank you. All right, seeing other names in the queue at this time, we will now go to the public for public comment. Are there any comment cards on this item? Okay. On this item, you speaking? Okay. First up, we have Dr. James Feeney.
Thank you. I apologize if this was already mentioned, but I noticed the dollar amounts for this item and the previous item match would suggest that the cost to manage this grant will be coming from another source, and I think that's a problem. So I would suggest in the next couple weeks you identify whether there will be oversight, and if so, how that oversight is funded. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that a comment card for this one? Okay. Seeing no other comment cards at this time, we will now come back to our board. Seeing no names inside of the queue, Madam Secretary, please call for the vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Okay. Seeing that Madam Vice President Carla Powell Lewis has returned to the meeting, I will now turn the meeting back over to her as she conducts all of our committee of the holes. You now have the meeting.
Good evening. I do apologize for my tardiness. We are now on to item 4, Professional Services Contract, Louisiana Association of the Deaf, Deaf Focus, consideration of a request for the approval of a professional services contract between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and Louisiana Association of the Deaf doing business as Deaf Focus in the amount of $30,000 to provide sign language services, strategic alignment, exemplary customer service, funding source general fund. Okay. Is there a motion? Move. Okay, it has been moved by President Lanus and seconded by Mr. Martin. We will now go to board comment. Mr. Martin.
Thank you. I just want to say how impressed I am with our translators every time they're up here, and I want to talk about them, so they have to talk about themselves in signing to the public. But seriously, we appreciate very much the great work you do for us. It's an often thankless task, but we thank you and deeply appreciate it. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Russ.
Also what he said.
Okay, Mr. Lannis.
My sentiments are the same. I know we wear you all out every meeting. So hats and kudos to both of you, and thank you for all that you do for our district. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the board, we will now turn to comments from the public. Seeing none, we return to comments from the board. Seeing none, we will entertain a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Item 5, professional services contract. Instructure Incorporated, consideration of a request for the approval of a professional services contract between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and Instructure Incorporated, or Canvas, in the amount of $34,768 to provide an instructional technology platform for professional development and resources, strategic alignment, employee development, funding source, general fund. Is there a motion? It has been moved by Mr. Russ. Is there a second? It has been seconded by Mr. Ballou. Comments from the board at this time? Okay, seeing no comments from the board, we will now turn to comments from the public. Seeing none, we return to comments from the board. Seeing none, we will now entertain a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Item 6, professional services contract, Attuned Education Partners, LLC. Consideration of a request for the approval of a professional services contract between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and Attuned Education Partners, LLC, in the amount of $120,000 to create a multi-year strategic plan for IDEA, public schools, strategic alignment, student achievement, funding source, strong school systems, strategic planning initiative. Is there a motion? Okay, it has been moved by Mr. Russ. Is there a second? It has been seconded by Mr. Ballou. Comments from the board. Mr. Godeg.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, and welcome. Glad you could make it. I was just curious, exactly what is this? Is this, are we paying for a consultant for the IDEA charter schools? I'm confused as to what it is.
No, Dr. Bethel can come up. This is more like a pass-through for us, but
Okay, whatever it is, could you explain it to me? Thank you.
Yes, sir. So the district, every year we are responsible for completing a super app, which is the application for all the federal, well, most of the federal grants. So the charter schools have the option to also apply for different initiatives in the super app. So IDEA.
Before you go on, what is super app?
This, the super application, it's something that all districts do. It's from LDOE, and it consists of Title I, Title II, Title III, Title IV, and competitive grant funding.
Okay, thank you.
That's what it is. So IDEA is a Type 1 charter school. So our charter schools have the right to also participate and to ask for competitive funding. So this grant is a competitive grant, and the state awarded us, and I know you've never seen this term before, this grant. It's a new grant, and they awarded this to IDEA, but it flows through our school system.
So us approving this is just really bookkeeping. It is a grant that IDEA Charter School applied for, one from the state, but because we're the LEA, the money comes to us and then it goes to them.
Yes,
okay,
sir.
I just wanted to be clear because that was not clear to me reading through it. So thank you very much for explaining that.
And board member, what if I just want to say this goes for any of the 14 charter schools that we have in our school system. I know sometimes people don't see this, but the 14 charter schools are part of our portfolio, just like any other school, so they get to apply for any grants. So anytime there's a grant that's awarded, it'll go through us because they're part of the school system.
Yeah, I have zero problem with the thing. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't our money going to them. It was a grant that they applied for, they won. So it's rightfully theirs. I
Yes,
have no
sir.
problem with it. Thank you.
The Strong School System grant, it's a new grant.
Thank you. Mr. Lannis.
Yes, ma'am. I'll be real quick, Dr. Bethley. I'm sorry, and I wasn't trying to be disruptive. That's what I was trying to ask council. Was this a pass-through? I think this is a good grant. Obviously, IDEA needs a lot of help and support in order to improve. And this is something that can definitely help them to improve because we're going to be watching very closely.
Right.
But thank you again.
Yes,
Thank you. Seeing no further comment from the board. Oh, Mr. Lewis.
Even though it's a pass-through, do we get the opportunity to monitor how they're spending the money? Or once they get the money, it's theirs?
no, sir. It's the money is managed with
By
the
them.
Office of Federal Programs.
Okay, so it's
Sir,
managed by you.
Right. They have to provide us with the invoice and their plan and what they're doing.
Okay.
So you're the watcher.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay.
Right.
Very good, Dr. Bethler. We know you got it. All right, thank you. Seeing no further comments from the board, we will now turn to comments from the public. Ms. Matthews.
Based on Dr. Bethler's
Okay, thank you. Dr. Finney.
Thank you. Unless this has changed in the last couple of weeks, this board does not have a contractual arrangement with IDEA Public Schools. You should not be managing grants for them until and unless the two parties come to an agreement on a new charter contract, which last time I checked had not yet happened, and it's well after July 1st. Furthermore, if I understand the state's source of the money correctly, this is federal money that brings into play a very strict set of purchasing rules. So if you are allowing IDEA Public Schools to sole source something and you are in charge of controlling federal money coming through the state to this system to IDEA and purchasing laws aren't followed, that's a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Finney. Seeing no further comments from the board, from the public, we will now turn to comments from the board. I have entered into the queue, and I just simply would like Dr. Narcisse for someone to reply to Dr. Finney's statement about us not having a contractual agreement.
I can speak to it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Attorney Shanley.
So we granted an extension to all of the charter schools who are under negotiation, and the council for IDEA actually has the template for the contract, and they actually sent us a response this past week. So we should have something completed in short form.
And our goal, Vice President Powell Lewis, is to try to get the contracts done sooner or later. We're hopeful we can get it done in October for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
And I just want to clarify, Attorney Shamlin, we do have an active contract in place with IDEA and all the other charter schools, correct?
Yes, sir. That's
because of the extensions. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further comment from the board, we will now entertain a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Item 7, Professional Services Contract, Baton Rouge Youth Coalition. Consideration of a request for the approval of a professional services contract between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and Baton Rouge Youth Coalition, or BRIC, in the amount of $1,500,000 for students to participate in career readiness programs. Strategic alignment, student achievement, funding source, general fund. Is there a motion? It has been moved by Mr. Lannis and seconded by Mr. Gode. We will now have comments from the board. Mr. Lannis.
Mr. Lucas, can you come down? Oh, he's already down. So first, before I even give any words, I'm supporting this. I just wanted to be understood. I met you 2016. I saw the work that you did bringing and coalescing together 10,000, nearly 10,000 young people from all around this country around a single issue, and understanding who they identify, and how they can better serve their communities. To me, when you look at items like this, it's bigger than just talking about the contract itself. It's about understanding the work, the need, and also understanding the person's heart. And what I know about you, Lucas, is that your heart is truly into this. You don't look at students based on where they come from. You don't look at them based on their skin color. You only care about them. I've seen you cry tears for the students who you work with every single day. I've seen the amazing work of BRIC that you do all across our school district working with our kids, and not one time have you ever come to us and asked us for a penny. So I want you to know that I not only support you, I support your work, and I think that you guys are doing an amazing job working with our students, and my hat goes off to you. And as I said before, I support this item. I just want to put that on the record.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have entered into the queue as well. Lucas, you already know. He and I have had conversations before about when I taught at Port Allen High School. That was the first time I was introduced to Baton Rouge Youth Coalition, and I had a set of students who just constantly talked about, oh, I can't miss my BRIC meeting, and I was over student government, and I can't miss my meeting. They would cancel the SGA meeting because they had to make it to BRIC. And they had to make it to BRIC so that way they would be prepared for the ACT, for them to be able to have communication with students from other parts of the city, from other parts of the region as well. And just the outcome of those students speaks volumes. And just as Mr. Lannis mentioned, it's not about race, it's not about a particular demographic at all. And the outcomes have been phenomenal. I have seen students come out with full scholarships as a result of their participation in your program. So thank you so much. Okay, Mr. Lewis.
Just a point of order, Madam Vice President, since we have somebody up at the mic, can you identify him for the audience or
Sure.
identify himself?
Will you please identify yourself, sir?
Yes. My name is
My apologies.
Better move this up. My name is Lucas Spielfogel, and for the last 12 years, I've been the executive director of the Baton Rouge Youth Coalition, or BRIC.
Thank you so much. Mr. Lewis.
Hey, Lucas. BRIC does great work. We met way back in the fall. We talked about it. The results are phenomenal. I have no problem with what BRIC does. I love the work. Matter of fact, I wish you could put it in a bottle or a box or a can and sell it to the district, so maybe we could have some of the same outcomes. The only thing that worries me a little bit about this is the $1.5 million. When we talked before, that was before busing, stipends, the whole 9 yards. My only issue is that based on the number of kids that you're talking about serving and the amount of money, we're looking at spending an additional $7,500, which is basically half the MFP for a kid. And let me say this, and I hope anybody don't take it the wrong way, but every other Thursday, I sit up here and I feel like I'm taking part in an episode of Let's Make a Deal. You are about kids. Your organization is about kids. And that's a good thing. But I really don't know how much we're doing to move the needle forward. $1.5 million is a lot of money for a district that's going to be looking at probably a $60,000, $70,000 deficit next year. I'm sorry, $1 million deficit next year. And for 12 years, you've worked yourself off. You've worked hard to make BRIC a viable community education partner in this city. But I just have a hard time with the $1.5 million. Now, I don't have a hard time with BRIC. I love what y'all do. I've seen the results. What I have a hard time with is the money that we're going to invest.
Yeah, certainly. I don't think it would be appropriate for me to speak about this investment as a proportion of the entire budget, that's a conversation that's far above my pay grade. So I can only speak to the value of this investment. So first of all, just a small correction on the per pupil expense. This amount of money should not be thought of as a per pupil expense in regard to the number of students who are being served from EBR next school year. This funding is primarily going to be to launch an entire new site. So right now, we are serving approximately 310 8th through 12th graders, approximately 70% of whom are East Baton Rouge Parish students, and we are literally bursting at the seams. We have a waiting list. We simply can't serve any more students in our building, and we have an opportunity through this funding to double the capacity of BRIC in the next 2 to 3 years. So really the nature of the investment is reflective of the fact that launching an entire new site is a really big undertaking. So I want to make sure that it's clear that the money is being used this school year to make sure that we're laying the necessary infrastructure to be successful at this site in the coming years and reach a point where we could very easily be serving 5% of the entire EBR high school population. The second thing that I want to point out is the return on investment. I do have a presentation, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to have access to it at this point, but I will simply say that one of the slides in the presentation, and you may have it before you print it out.
Lucas, we could pull it up on here. Amy, do you have it already? Can you pull it up?
So one of the most important things I wanted to talk to you about today is the ROI of this investment, because while the investment, School Board Member Lewis, is extremely significant, I would say humbly that it is relatively modest compared to the return that it would yield. So what you have before you is an extremely conservative breakdown of the value of BRIC services along our continuum of service from 8th through 12th grade. And this does not even take into account the value of our services that happen after you graduate from high school. We stay with our students into and through college or whatever post-secondary degree they're pursuing, as well as into career placement. Now, I know you may be thinking, we don't invest in anything beyond high school, but I do think it's worth noting that the work that we do after high school is something like an insurance policy on the investment that you're making, because there is no point of entering post-secondary if ultimately you're not going to convert it into financial security. And that's what we're making sure. We're making sure through our post-high school services that the investment that you made in us, or excuse me, in us and in our fellows is made good on, is redeemed. And I also would push, as it relates to ROI, that we as a community, that we as a board, think about the long-term impact of what it means to have significantly more students entering our workforce and increasing their earnings, increasing their taxable income, and also the residual impact that has on our state with respect to things like unemployment savings and many other forms of savings. So I do understand that the number is significant, and trust me, I hope that you can tell by the sea of purple and also a whole bunch of people who wish that they could be here that this is a historic day for us as far as establishing some measure of financial sustainability and being able to launch a second site. But I promise you that the investment will prove relatively modest compared to the return. And the last thing I want to say is that the numbers on this slide obviously add up to far more than 1.5 million, but they don't include at all. Oh, there is a missing slide. Okay, well, anyway, they don't include at all the fact that in our history, our students have accumulated more than $85 million in scholarships. We are doing so much to defray the cost of college and to make post-secondary in general, whatever kind of college or whatever kind of post-secondary degree program, actually financially feasible. And that bears out in that $85 million figure and also in the debt or lack thereof that our students take on or don't take on. So I'm simply saying I don't take this opportunity lightly. As School Board Member Darius Lannis said, This is the first time that we've ever been up for consideration for this kind of support, and I promise you that we will steward every single nickel to maximize outcomes.
And I'm sure you will. We met earlier in the year. Everything you're saying, I applaud. I have no issue with with Baton Rouge Youth Coalition and what y'all do. My primary concern was I was looking at the money, because that's my job.
Sure.
Is to sit up here and to make sure that we're investing wisely. This is not a bad investment. It's not a bad investment.
Sure.
But we're in financial straits. Some people may agree, some people may disagree. But we've got to watch every dime. I'm going to support the item, but I wasn't going to sit here and, act like I didn't have concerns about it.
Sure.
Because I actually do.
Sure.
And we had a conversation a couple weeks ago, and I told you what? I'm glad you got your money. You call that? I'm glad you got your money, because you can continue doing what you're doing. But at the same time, my job is to make sure that we are spending taxpayers' dollars wisely.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Gode.
Yes, and Mr. Spielvogel, I recognize that President Lannis called you by your first name because he was afraid to try to pronounce your second, I believe. I couldn't let him get away with that. Just out of curiosity, could you say what brought you to Baton Rouge?
Yes. In 2010, I came here to be a teacher as a member of Teach for America, and I taught at Baker Middle School before starting working at Brick.
Thank you. And I had two reasons for asking you for that. One is that you do have classroom experience that translates into how you relate to the students. And the second is I just want to give a shout out to Teach for America, because you're the kind of person that they bring to our city. I know you went to Yale and other things like that, so Baton Rouge was not on your list of places to go, and now you've come, you've made an impact here, you married here, you have children here, and things like that. So I just wanted to give a shout out for Teach for America for the kinds of people that they bring and infuse into our educational ecosystem. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Thank you. How long have you been operating this program in Baton Rouge?
12. This is my 12th year, and the program has existed for this is its 15th year.
And you've existed essentially primarily on philanthropic support before now.
Yes.
Millions of dollars. So our students, mostly 70%, I think you said right now, have gotten millions and millions of dollars of free services thanks to the goodwill of the people who donate to your organization and the hard work that y'all have done. So I think $1.5 million is what this is a small price to pay. This is not a speculative investment in any way, shape, or form. This is buying a proven commodity. So I support it for that reason. I share many of the concerns of my colleague, Mr. Lewis, about the overall budget. And there are days when I want to say, I'm not voting to spend any more money until we've got a better budget process and a better handle on what's going to happen, not just this fiscal year, but next fiscal year when ESSER funding leaves. But that would be irresponsible for us, and that would not be serving the students that we have right now. I know one concern I heard from some folks who wrote to us about this item was that you're serving, on the whole, a slightly more elite student in terms of academic performance, and certainly you serve folks who are going to get a scholarship to college anyway, but you're helping them get to that next level. But you're also helping, if I understood our earlier conversation correct, you're also helping students who are on the cusp of whether to have any post-secondary education, correct?
Yes, I'd like to add some nuance to the comment, the suggestion that every student who comes to Brick is supposedly academically elite. I will say that every student that comes to Brick is incredible because they're making an investment in their future, and they're saying that I'm willing to come to this program with pretty rigorous expectations as far as attendance. But our students run the gamut of their academic performance as far as how that bears out quantitatively. And I think an example of that is their ACT scores. And as you can see on the slide before you, Brick averages often more than 3 points, sometimes nearly 4 points of gains per student on the ACT annually. And if you looked at a sample size or you looked at a data set of our students' ACT scores, you'd see that students were going from a 12 to a 14, from a 14 to a 17, and from a 25 to a 28. They truly run the gamut, and they also run the gamut as far as what their post-secondary goals are. They may be, I have a student sitting in the audience right now who's a deep sea welder, and he made sure he was here tonight. I have students sitting in the audience who have bachelor's degrees, and that is reflective of the diversity of academic interests and levels that is common at Brick.
Thank you. It's an exceptional group that you serve. I think the other thing, kind of to Coach Lewis's comment, that I struggle with sometimes sitting up here is, we have so many of our kids who can't even read, and they're getting through 8th grade into high school who can't even read. And there's a part of me that periodically wants to say, I don't want to spend a dime on anybody going to college or anything extra until we've got everybody able to read. But that's doing it but I swore to help all the kids of this parish. And I say there's a good resource here, and I'm going to deny this resource to kids because they've already got enough. They're doing well enough. They're not likely to fail in life, so we're not going to help them get to their best potential. I'm not serving those kids well, and so for all of those reasons, I'm strongly in support of this. Thank you.
Ms. Stewart. Okay, so she waives her comment. Before Dr. Narcisse speaks, he has requested that Mr. Ballou will go ahead and make his comments.
Thank you. In terms of funding, I know we're investing in our students, but it's also a benefit to the city as a whole. I don't know, Dr. Narcisse or Mr. Spielvogel, if there's been any talks with the city about sharing in cost going forward. Maybe too late for this year, but maybe in future years, the city could share the cost. I think might be appropriate to look at.
How share the cost of
the contract. I'm not talking about this year necessarily, but in future years.
Sir, yes.
I just thought.
Thank you. Dr. Narcisse.
So I'm just super excited. Took us 2 years, Lucas, since we got here, trying to bring this program into the school system at scale. This program, as far as I'm concerned, is community transformation. And I know it is a lot of money, but sometimes we have to invest to transform our community. And I think BRIC is one of those programs that do that. It actually fits in our overall strategy that we have with our 6 keys and our pathways work, where we're trying to provide access, as you said, Boardman Martin, to all the kids in this city, not just some. And the reality is they've been doing this work for a while, because when you look at the results that BRIC has had, it's been very clear on the performance of the kids, what schools they go to, and how they perform. And as we scale up our early college work, our pathways work, this is a huge strategy as we're trying to implement that. And it also makes sure that every kid in this city actually gets what they actually need. Our hope is as we keep scaling this, we partner in this process on trying to make it to scale. And the reality is, when you look at the 10,000 high school students that we have, our kids need it in a lot of different ways. BRIC brings an entire different space and a lot of learning to help inform our practice in that work. And so I'm just glad that this board has taken the courage to do that. I know we have to work through the budget. It's a lot of money, but this is an investment I think that's worth to do. So I appreciate the board just considering that.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the board, we will now turn to comments from the public. Thank you so much. Dr. Finney.
Thank you. As a philanthropic effort, I have no issue with BRIC. Sounds like they do great work. As a use of the public's money, this is a horrible idea. And there are many reasons. Among them, the proposed contract period is July 1st, 3 months ago, through the end of June. And the executive director said this is mostly about long-term nebulous planning of some sort, and not really much is going to happen with that $1.5 million that won't be available for other uses. Furthermore, everything has to have a balance. If you're spending $1 million, $1.5 million on this, that's $1.5 million that isn't buying buses, isn't giving raises to bus drivers, isn't hiring 50 full-time employees to do this same work and make sure there's equity. Yeah, you remember some of you ran on equity? There is no guarantee that I noticed in the contract that there will be access for every student that needs this kind of help and could benefit from it. That's not necessarily an issue if it's a private effort funded by philanthropists. It is a really, really big deal if you're using public money. At some point, if you just keep tossing money here, money there, you're not going to have any money left, and somebody's going to wonder about purchasing laws and fairness and where the money was actually spent. If they could identify an existing empty EBR facility and propose to rent it for $1 a year, I'm all for that. I'm not for an appropriation of $1.5 million. $1.5 million, you'll probably ruin them and they won't be able to do the good work they had been doing. So please give this some serious thought and then vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Brumfield.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kamisha Brumfield. I am a member of the East Baton Rouge Parish community. I'm a mother of a student that attends East Baton Rouge Parish School, and I am a college fellow who has been a product of the Baton Rouge Youth Coalition program. I stand before you today to ask you to please go forth in providing them with the funding. And I understand that is a very large dollar amount that, shouldn't be easily just thrown into the hands of anyone. But as someone who has not only been through the program, but I've worked directly with the people and the team members in this organization as an employee myself. And I've moved on to larger pastures with other companies, but it still remains the same that at my heart of hearts, I believe firmly in this program and everything that they stand for and everything that they have to offer. I say this because as a member of the community, the most important thing to me is our youth. They are our future. And no one else and no other organization that I know of puts our youth first above Baton Rouge Youth Coalition. I come from a family where no one in my family, my immediate family for sure, has ever been to college and graduated. I stand before you today. I am a student at Louisiana State University, and I currently work in my field even though I haven't finished my degree. I work as a human resources, informational specialist at BREC. And still today, I ask you to support this program because you may say that it is a rigorous program and only the best of the best students to get in. As someone who sat on the committee for the recruitment and admissions process for BRIC, I can assure you that that is not always the case. We have streamlined our process to invest in students who want to be there, that are motivated, that want to put their best foot forward. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to have a 3.0 GPA and straight A's. If that child is willing and committed to doing what's best for them and what's best for their future, BRIC is most certainly the program that's going to give them the chance to do so. And I know you may say that this amount of money is such a large amount of money to put into this program, but as you stated yourself, Mr. Martin, they have appropriately used the funds that they've been donated from many other organizations and charitable entities, but this is something that we're asking of our own parish to provide to the children that are within this parish. As a parent, I think that providing this money to BRIC is something that I would invest in 1,000,000 times over if I had the funds. Why? Because at the end of the day, I've seen the work that they've done. I've seen a very fragile 9th grader come in and stay to themselves, and maybe they're struggling socioeconomically, maybe they're struggling with school, but when it comes down to it, Brick has helped them grow out of their shell, get to where they need to be, and improve for the better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brumfield. Mr., I believe this is Ashton Doucette.
How you doing? I am a student. Well, I attend Brick. I've been there for a couple of weeks now. And some of y'all said that there was a lot of money going into Brick, which I think should be fundable because we are a low educational state. And like one of your fellow board members said, after elementary, they start to plummet. I think if we get them from elementary and keep going, we can probably put our state up with education, especially with ACTs and tutoring and just talking to them and trying to understand what are they missing? Why are they plummeting after elementary? Is it our fault or is it, whose fault is it? And then the whole tax dollar thing. I'm young, so I don't understand everything. So, but the whole tax dollar thing, I feel like you're gonna get money back because you got students going into Brick, they're going into colleges, right? So you might have 10 students out of those 30. I'm saying not saying 30 are going to Brick, but 30 that are in Louisiana still in college. Those 10, 15 students stay in Louisiana to try and better the community, get in y'all seats or become mayor, governor, and they have that education once in the hood, now they're one of y'all. So I feel like the 1.5 million for the tax dollars is very, very, y'all could do that. If not, just $1 million instead of the 5 at the end. So that's pretty much it.
Mr. Ashton, if you'll come back to the mic, I just have a question. What school do you attend, sir?
I go to Capitol High School.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for your time.
Miss Caitlin Maddox.
Hello, my name is Caitlin Maddox. I just want to say why I support Brick. I support Brick because from the time that I have been in high school, even now, they have supported me throughout my college career and even my career now professionally. And I will say, as an accountant, and I've been an accountant in my family, and working as an accountant, I run numbers all days with budgets and just also looking at state funds and federal funds being spent. But I would say, as far as like the problem with the budget, that's a big problem that I personally feel that needs to be addressed in a different manner because you can't take that problem and put that on Brick. But this program, it has transformed many lives I've seen, and then as well as in Brick, it approaches many problems in such an innovative way that I have not seen in any nonprofit so far yet. And just seeing that, I would say even with like transportation, I see many nonprofits and other organizations where they have, these services, but people are not able to access them, but they have tackled that in a way where they have given transportation. And so I just commend Lucas for even being here so long. I gave him 5 years and I said, oh, he's probably going to move back home and stuff. But the fact that he has been committed to this cause and the work that he has put behind it. So I'm just thrilled at just seeing all the things they have done. So, and that's all that I have to say.
Thank you. All right. Ms. McKenzie, Miss or Mr. McKenzie. And please state your name for the record. I just want to know how to pronounce your first name.
It's Alex, Aleix. My mother named me. I know it's pretty weird.
That's okay. It's all good.
So I am a student of Woodlawn High. I am also a member of the Baton Rouge Youth Coalition. And I just wanted to say that this program has helped me so drastically because even though still now I still am choosing my career, even though I'm in I'm a sophomore at my school, but this program has helped me decide what career I want to choose and the kind of future that I want to have for myself and the way that I want to support my family, and that I just want to say that you should support this kind of program because it really helps students like me who don't know what career they want to have. And it's really for all students, and it's really flexible. The fact that it's, I don't know how to, it's just, it's for everybody. Just, it's not just restricted to, you know, like people with low GPAs, high GPAs. BRIC is for everybody, and I just wanted to say that you should support this. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Alex. We really appreciate it. Okay, seeing no further comments from the public, we will now turn to comments from the board. Mr. Lannis.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Oh my gosh, I might take the whole 5 minutes on this one because I heard so much. And for me, some of the notions that I heard, it just does not sit well with me. I'll tell you why. If we go take $1.5 million and we give it to a out-of-state company, we're going to hear arguments all over the community. But when we want to invest $1.5 million into an organization that has for years invested into our students, has never asked for one dime, one time, and continued to move the work and move the needle on behalf of our community, to me, that's something that we shouldn't even question. We talk all the time about all the talent and skills that are leaving out of our city, leaving out of our state, and we have organizations like BRIC that are on the ground trying to retain the talent inside of our city and inside of our state. Anything that goes outside the norm of trying to break down or deconstruct organizations like BRIC, that's a problem for me. And while I do also understand the concerns around the budget, we talked about this during the budgetary process. We specifically allocated buckets of money to support these types of initiatives. So it's not that we're not progress monitoring, it's not that we're not concerned about the amount of money that we're spending. This does not go outside the scope of what we approved this summer. This does not go outside of what we have talked about. We need further investments inside of our students. We're not talking about a blanketed contract where we're just, you know, looking to put a plan and something together. We're talking about real action affecting students' lives and also helping our teachers in our school system in the midst. To me, that should receive 2 thumbs up. But for everybody, I understand it's going to be arguments on both sides. As I said before, and as I will continue to say, we need more organizations like BRIC. And I wish that we can go out and find more local organizations who we can give philanthropic dollars to, rather than taking the money and going outside the scope of our city and outside the scope of our state. Because we need to be investing in organizations that much like BRIC. Because if we want our kids to stay here, if we want to improve the lives of the people who live inside this community, that's the way that we do it. And I do agree with the notion that I've heard from other people inside of the community, that we don't have to go outside of our city in order to galvanize and create better talent. We have talent pools right here, organizations right here who are doing phenomenal work. And I'm sorry, Ms. Chatelaine, I'm gonna throw your group out there, the 3 O'Clock Project, because I think I said it last week. 13,000 meals every week during COVID inside of some of the most underserved communities in this city. Something should just be a no-brainer. And for me, this is a no-brainer. Continue doing what you're doing, BRIC. I support you, and I ask that our board members do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stewart.
Oh, yes, hi. I just want to say that I agree with a lot of my colleagues as it relates to the program, the efforts, and what you guys are doing. But I do have an issue with the amount. And of course, reasoning, as my colleague said, about, you know, our fiduciary duties and, of course, being responsible with our upcoming budget. And just to piggy on what colleague President Lannis said about the allocation of existing funds already for this, which I'm not really familiar with, but can you come up, because I want to ask questions. You mentioned that this monies also too would help with another location, and it also would increase the number of students that you would cater to. Have we even looked at possibly a location being like what Dr. Finney mentioned, in one of our existing locations, possibly just to offset some of this cost so that it's not as much? Have we even taken that into consideration?
It has been discussed very briefly, but it is not something that we have really knew was on the table in a meaningful way. So, we've been going through this process, waiting for the budget approval back in July and waiting for the time to come and make this presentation, which is the nature of the delay around the steps that we would have taken and that an organization can take when there are, financial assurances made, such as going out and hiring the staff that you need for this second location. We're certainly open, to exploring that, as long as, obviously it is the right setup in terms of it's the right building and it's the right location that makes sense in terms of the schools that we're looking to partner with. But that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that I would actually be open to, Dr. Narcisse, if that's something that we possibly can do. Possibly, I don't want to say not do the contract. I'm for the contract. I just want us to look at the dollar amount.
So we briefly had a conversation about how we can support that work, but the 1.5 that they do have still helps in terms of all the other components. I would say that may help with future funding support, but I do believe the current amount that's asked will help with them to continue to build out for more access for kids. But we did briefly have a conversation about location. As you know, the conversation would be to look at a location in the south part of the parish. And as you know, right now we have vacant buildings in the north part of the parish. And so the south is actually where the majority of the demographic has shifted. And so there's a lot of things we can be thinking about. But what's important, as I've been talking to Lucas briefly about, was we want to keep that program to be as pure as possible and to not change their model too much because it has success in the current structural model that it has. So to answer your question, we can look at spaces, but we don't have an existing school that's vacant or anything like that. We'd have to look at maybe partnering with other partners is something that we briefly talked about, but we haven't gotten into detail. But I do think there are going to be a lot of partners that are going to be willing to partner in this effort with BRIC as we start looking at what we do in this southern part of the parish.
Okay. And so what I'm trying to identify is the 1.5 million, that's for another location, but what type of increase in student population does that service? Like,
so we're absolutely. So next school year, there'll be 100 additional students in that site, in addition to the more than 200 that we currently have at our current location. So next school year, at the location that we're at right now, downtown, you can expect there to be between 300 and 350. And I want to make sure it's clear that a portion of this funding is also to, sustain financially our existing location. As has been alluded to, we have been self-sustaining for 15 years, but there is a difference between being self-sustaining and being sustainable. And we're not asking the school district to entirely fund our current operation. We're asking for the school district to, by way of this contribution, this investment, make it possible for us to have a level of financial sustainability that we have never had before, while still maintaining a significant fundraising responsibility. We're going to have to continue to raise a significant amount of funds to sustain the existing operation. But the majority of the funding is going to go into the launch of a new site. As I said before, we have a waiting list. We cannot actually physically have any more students in our current site. I would like us to think about the investment as not just making it possible for 100 additional students, and mind you, students who would have had less access to BRIC's current location, because the entire purpose of launching another location is to locate it in a way that increases access and equity, both from a transportation standpoint and from a school partnership standpoint. We know that physical proximity to schools is going to strengthen recruitment relationships and also just general partnership. So that means it's going to open up the level of access there. As Alex said, BRIC is for everybody. As long as you are willing to come in and make the commitment of attending 80% of the time, you are going to be successful in the program. But please think about it as an investment in, by the time we reach 2026, 27, being at the fully developed capacity of an additional 300 8th through 12th graders for our parish. So we're talking about by the start of the 2026-7 school year, BRIC is conceivably serving a full 5% of East Baton Rouge Parish's high school students. When you think about the amount of money, and when we're talking about money, and it's really easy to be distracted by the amount, but think about, in addition to the ROI, one of the things I didn't tell you about was the savings that the school district has with respect to the responsibility of counselors. Dr. Finney, is correct about the fact that we need to invest, and Dr. Narcisse and I have talked at length about the need to invest in our school counselors to make sure that, first of all, they're not overextended in the way that they are, and also that they have the necessary training to be able to do all of the various things that they are unreasonably asked to do. But also, they can't do everything. Teachers can't do everything. And BRIC is not in competition. We're in partnership with teachers. We're in partnership with counselors. You can ask the different counselors and teachers that we work with. We offset so much of the responsibility that they have to spend time on, and that is dollars. So I would ask you not only to think about the impact directly on the students that we're serving, but the way that it relieves pressure on our schools, who, if administrators were here right now, they would tell you how grateful they are that we're providing a level of service that they are simply under-resourced to provide.
Can I just give you some hard numbers to Lucas's point? We have 10,000 total high school kids. And out of the 10,000 total high school kids, you have about 2,500 per grade level, right? And think about that we're moving kids into advanced classes with pathways work between AP, dual enrollment, and industry-based certification. And so as those kids move up the pipeline and they're getting more access to these classes, they need programs like BRIC to help build resiliency to move them up. Right now, you're about, but if everything works out and we plan, you open another 100-something sites, you're busting at the seams, so that's about 400, 500 kids. We can see this program being the overall strategy to continued success through all the kids running through a pipeline.
Yeah.
And one of the strategies that we've been talking through that has been missing in East Baton Rouge is that when we talk about schools, we don't talk about schools as a progression from the time a child is born to a career. We talk about schools based on buildings or who goes at what building. And this is the shift that we're trying to do overall. And that's why as far as I'm concerned, when I came on board, superintendent here, and I talked to Lucas, I was like, wow, we actually had a local program that got it because access and opportunity for kids in our city was not there. Kids were selected who got what class, who got what opportunity, who had what persistence in getting into class. And you can see that by race, you can see it by location and all those things. And so the reason I bring this up, I'm excited, is because it's been 2 years of us having a conversation about how do we get a program like this to be a part of our overall strategy, and they are local, and so they've gotten it. But the reality is we are in a very tough culture to move that work around this type of success, and so I'm just excited that the board's considering.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, feel free to stay at the mic. All right, so I have entered into the queue. First, I wanted to ask, did you finish your presentation? Because I saw that there were other slides. Or did you answer, or did you reply to your, did you reply to the, or respond to the rest of the slides that you had in your comments in regards to Ms. Stewart and Dr. Narcisse's statements as well?
I think so. I think one of the, I didn't really have a chance before, I didn't have a chance to talk about the full scope and breadth and depth of the model. I don't know if that is something that would be useful right now, but I think that what would be useful...
If you could, how many more slides do you have, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't know, but I can make it 2.
Could you make it 2? Yes, please.
I can make it 2.
Thank you.
I'll make it 1. I simply just want to point out that one of the things that we haven't talked about is the third bucket of this partnership, which is BRIC's direct work with the school district and with schools. Our board, our staff has done a tremendous amount of thinking as we've talked to Dr. Narcisse and School Board President Lannis about what does it look like for BRIC to best partner with the school system. We've entertained a number of ideas, such as BRIC being in a school, for example. And what we've come away with, as was alluded to by Dr. Narcisse, is that the best manifestation of BRIC is the one that maintains the integrity of what has gotten us to this point. But that doesn't mean that we can't partner in other ways. And in speaking with school leaders in preparation for this presentation, for example, there is an appetite for programming that would give students, teachers, and counselors training on aspects of the college application process or just general post-secondary readiness that they don't have maybe the time to deliver in schools or the knowledge to deliver in schools. And so one of the examples of the way that we're going to deepen our relationship with the district is to have a college readiness conference that would be part of this funding contract. Baked into that is also, we're working alongside Mastery Prep. And I'm only saying this to establish credibility with you in terms of the quality of the program, but I'm the author of a book called The College Playbook, which is used in 250 school districts nationwide. And because of our partnership with Mastery Prep, they're going to donate 100 books to every single school, as well as 100 licenses to the component digital courses, and that has a value of $7,500 per school. So I'd like to think about that coming back into the district. And then also just generally being in a stronger partnership with counselors, school leaders in terms of, as Dr. Narcisse said, sharing learnings, sharing resources and connections. For example, BRIC has developed an incredibly strong network of relationships with colleges here and across the country. Because of our relationships with colleges, we have an ability to almost have preferred treatment for our students by those admissions offices, and that's something that we can translate over to our partnerships with schools. So it's really important to me that while the two kind of top line items here that we're talking about are ensuring the sustainability of BRIC's current program, but more importantly, launching another program, it's also about using all of the things that BRIC has learned to scale our knowledge to reach as many of the high school students in this city as we possibly can. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you for confining your statements to one slide. What I will say is you have chosen an awesome picture to put on your slide. So Mr. Kimani Alexander was one of my students, and I used to question what was his superpower because I was watching him grow at such a rapid rate. And at this point, this young man, in the little bit of time that I've known him, because I refuse to date myself, has went from being a student at Scotlandville, not the top of his class, but eventually he grew, he became an avid writer, and from there I saw him go through college, and I now know him as this self-employed entrepreneur with more than one business. And so that speaks volumes as well. The other is, thank you so much for sharing your playbook. I have had the opportunity to read it. I would just ask, as my colleagues have mentioned about the amount of money that we're about to give BRIC, will you please provide a playbook for each one of us?
Absolutely. And the only reason I can't offer it to you 100% for free is I don't have the authority to. That's a Mastery Prep question. But in all seriousness, they've already committed to a 40% discount on any book-related products.
That's fine.
In a district-wide relationship. So, but yes, we can do that.
That's fine. It is definitely a wonderful read, you all, in how they, number one, prepare students, but then also for students who may not have that direct opportunity to participate with BRIC at this time, it will also bring context for us also. I did have one additional question and or comment. I heard that the locations that you all are working towards are in the South.
Not necessarily. And I
love the South, colleagues.
Yeah, no,
but y'all know I love the North too.
I did.
We love the North.
And I did have, in the contract, it does say BRIC South. But I'd like to just state for the record that we're very much still in the process of figuring out where the ideal location is.
Thank you so much. Ms. Chatelain.
Thank you to Mr. Lannis for those kind words earlier. But I think that it's important to note a few things here. Budget obviously is very important, and I do believe we as a board should go back through and make sure, right, that this is a wise use of taxpayer dollars. So thank you to Dr. Finney for bringing that up. The other point I want to make is that it's interesting to me, to say, well, why can't we do this within our own district, right? Innovative things like this and partnering with outside organizations are what ultimately bring inspiration and spark for other ideas and other things that can come. I think that this could potentially open doors for a lot of schools here in the district once this is a program that more kids have access to. So you never know, right, what can come in the years to follow. Also, success, right, begets success. I think in terms of dollars and budget, that if a program is successful and we're able to prove that, I have a lot of confidence that more dollars would come to this from the community and hopefully support and match what the district can put up. But a leap of faith sometimes is really needed, and I think after 30 years of never doing a program like this, now is a wonderful time to try it, and it has proven success, right? I would not say that if you didn't have 10 years of a proven track record.
15.
15. Thank you for that correction. That is an important one to make.
Respectfully.
I was going to say 10 plus because I didn't know exactly. Lastly, I do think beyond that, it would be lovely to almost have some strategic partnership with BRIC and consulting to be more equitable, because I also agree with that. How, right, it would be beautiful if this could be offered to every child. We know, though, it costs a lot of money. So I just think that's something for us to consider in the future is how can we strategically work with BRIC and maybe steal or borrow some of what you're doing that's working and not, mess with the model that you have, but rather take it and replicate it in pockets. That's my only comment I wanted to make.
Thank you. Coach Lewis.
2 quick points and then I'm done. And I've said it from this horseshoe several times. The pandemic changed the way we will educate forever in this country. There's a book called, you may recall the name of the book that we received at the conference this summer in Lake Charles, where a businessman wrote a book, and it was titled, Schools Can't Do It Alone. We really can't do it alone. Innovation drives everything. And you guys are on the right track. And in that book, there's a fold-out that's about that long that lists all of the things that we piled on teachers since the 1940s without adding one day. And again, I'll go back and pivot back to what I said earlier. I love what you guys are doing. There's no issue with me with what you guys are doing. And I think that you could be a resource because Lord knows we need some innovation in this district. We really do. A very wise man, Albert Einstein, who split the atom but failed his college entrance exam, made the comment in one of his speeches that imagination is more important than knowledge. So what BRIC is, I think, is a 15-year think tank on how to improve students' performance. So kudos to you guys. I'm on board with you. I've had kids from Mentorship Academy that attended your programs, so I know what you guys do. So just carry on the good work.
Thank you. Before we move to Mr. Russ, point of information and personal privilege. Can somebody get the air on, please? It's getting hot in here. Okay.
It is hot. I'm glad I didn't wear my jacket.
Yes, we also, before we move on as well, we would like to acknowledge one of our leaders within the city and state who was here in support of Baton Rouge Youth Coalition, but I believe he had to leave, and that is former Representative Ted James. So if you all will just give him a hand, although he is absent at this time. I just wanted to make sure we acknowledge excellence. Thank you. Mr. Russ.
Thank you. I support this item. I support the work of BRIC. Oftentimes, my only lament in the many organizations that do great work in our community is that they never grow outside the bounds of where they're planted and make it, across the parish, because there's so many kids across our parish. In my district, kids that are in our schools are not majority white. They're black, they're brown, and they're Hispanic, they're Arabic, on and on, they're Asian. Every kid in our district deserves what BRIC can offer. And I don't care if your second location's in the South. I care that it's in a place strategically to serve the most kids that you can. And I hope that eventually it's more than one, it's many, right? And so I support, as Ms. Chatelain put it, little faith in giving you guys the resources you need to take the next step into growing your program. And want to point out that, as has been alluded to, that you've been working with our school system for a number of years trying to land on what this partnership could look like. This is not something where, in fact, you guys came and said, hey, we need your help. Our community came to you and asked for you to grow. And so I think it's important that we honor that and put our money where our mouth is. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Mr. Gode. Okay, seeing no further comments in the queue, we will now entertain a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Way to go, BRIC. Okay, moving right along, I'm going to fill in for Madam Vice President, Ms. Carla Powell-Lewis. We will now go on to item B8, contract ethics. Consideration of a request for the approval of a professional service contract between the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board and Ethics in the amount of $30,960 to provide athletic shoes and apparel to select schools. Can I get a motion? Moved by School Board Member Patrick Martin. Seconded by Coach Cliff Lewis. Okay. It's time now. I go to the queue. I see School Member Mike Gode is in the queue.
Yes, thank you, President Atlantis. I would just like to get a little background on the project, because I understand as part of this, there will be some work done at some of the courts and things like that. So I will be quiet and give you my time. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you all. Good evening, Board President, Superintendent, and board members. My name is Lawrence Galloway, and I'm a proud product of East Baton Rouge Parish School System. I'm a McKinley Senior High School graduate of 2001, and it's funny that you all were having that discussion earlier about individuals leaving the city, but being able to come back and give back to your city. So with this project that we have and this partnership with the Langston Galloway Foundation, we believe in supporting athletes off the court so they can be better on the court. And when we support them off the court, that comes along with nutrition, academics, and other mentorship potential and possibilities. So with that, and I'm assuming I click through on here. Okay. All right. Just to give you a background, the board and the leadership team are all from the Baton Rouge area and have been a part of philanthropic activities within the Baton Rouge area. Most recently, part of that project with the Langston Galloway Foundation, if you're familiar, they refurbished 2 basketball courts, and I think that's what you're kind of alluding to in the Baton Rouge community, the Longfellow Park, and also most recently this year, the Gus Young Park. Even though what we're before you today to discuss is totally separate, it's a different project that we would like to discuss hopefully in a future date, but this is the beginning of that partnership towards mentorship to also support the students in the underprivileged and underserved areas. But yes, our goal future is to help you revitalize a East Baton Rouge Parish school system outdoor court so that you have the same feel, so we have safe and healthy environments for our students in this area and in the community. Beyond that, we also have other philanthropic activities that we participate in with the basketball clinics, and what we would like to start to do is gearing those towards the East Baton Rouge Parish school system students that they can participate in. More of the mentorship programs that we have, and also our not just students but also staff, giving them the proper techniques, giving them the proper access to the latest and innovative athletic coaching abilities to be able to coach students up just on the court and as well as off the court, because as we know, most of the time, most of the coaches are mentors to our students as well, and that's a good level of authority to be able to make sure they are trained. Along with Healthy Meals that we've partnership already with Terra High School, and we want to continue that and expand that partnership as well. And then finally, going back to your question about the court project, we are looking to do a court partnership like we've done 2 with BREC in this area as well, but doing one specifically with East Baton Rouge Parish School System. So to give an idea a little bit about what we're also going to do with the purchasing of the athletic material apparel, one of the other ideas that we've talked about through the athletic department is having a partnership through Career and Technical Education. The company is based right here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and they go through the whole logistic, operational development, small business process, being able to work with shoe designers, looking at what a tech pack does for a shoe design and see the whole production from concept all the way to the shelf of an item. T-shirts, shorts, pants, sweatpants. So those sneakerheads who really like the Jordans or any other shoe, specifically our Ethics, they can see it from a sketch on a notebook pad all the way to it actually being shipped out the door. And we think that'll be a great opportunity for students in this area. This is an example of the color palette or the colorways that we will be offering to the East Baton Rouge Parish School System in partnership with the athletic department. The apparel shirt is an example as well, which you have on the screen. And of course, the athletic short apparel would be matching the same material, same flow or same style as well. About the partnership, we talked with, and I'll let her go a little further into detail about it. We looked at these 6 schools. This is the breakdown and the cost based on the discount that we're able to offer East Baton Rouge Parish School System. As you can see, it is pretty significant on being able to clothe and unify these students. And I will let Ms. Christina speak about exactly who these students are and how they are identified.
Lawrence, let me just add something while Christina comes up. We all know that there's a huge inequity in the school system. There's schools that no problem getting partnerships, and then we have other schools who don't get any partnerships. That's a fact, right? And what I like about the partnership, I'm going to give you the breakdown, everything, this will help cover a lot of those schools that can't get partnerships. And because if you go to partners like Nike or any other folks, they don't look to go partner with certain schools. That's a fact, right? So what our goal is not only about what you're seeing with the work in terms of the kids learning, but also to close an inequity gap that we know have existed for a long time. So I just wanted to put that up front to the board and the public while we walk through this, because this will help in a whole lot of different ways and also have a learning component to it, which is why we're excited about it. But we wanted to make sure that people are aware of that. Go ahead, Christine.
So Dr. Narcisse kind of answered the question, but that's the part I was going to share with you. The schools that were selected are schools who evidence most need. We contacted the athletic directors at those schools and their coaches, and those were the schools who did not yet have either agreements already in place, any pre-orders, or they did have expressed need already because their athletes are either purchasing the shoes themselves or having to come out of pocket for a significant amount of athletic fees to cover those expenses. So sometimes, in some cases, that could potentially have a student not participating because they're not able to pay the fees that are necessary for the required items to play the game. So those schools were selected based on percentage of economically disadvantaged students and then express need from their athletic directors or athletic personnel administration on site.
And thank you, since I think I'm still on the clock. You mentioned something earlier about the shoes being made here.
The company is located in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Now, the actual design is different components. We design them across the nation, and then it is, designed in another location. But yeah, they are shipped here. We disperse them, distribute them here. The whole works as far as the operational side is
But
done
the company is headquartered here.
in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
So they'll get to see how the whole process goes. So thank you very much. Appreciate your presentation.
Christina, can you give the board just the number of kids we have in sports now? Because we started, when we arrived, just so the board's aware, when I became superintendent, I got a call from Doug Williams when I just became superintendent here. And he told me about how the school system did not have elementary sports. Kids would have to pay BREC in order to play sports here, which was very interesting phenomenon. But now, 2 years in, with having elementary sports, how many kids do we have now in the program?
We have roughly 1,500 elementary sports students, and then obviously our sports from middle school to high school, we cover approximately almost 6,000 student athletes between all the grades and all the sports.
So over Saturday, we had almost all I came up with the sports. We had volleyball, both boys and girls, flag football, where we got kids that are actually at Mr. Ballou, one of your schools at Broadmoor High School was packed. But the key thing is that we're trying to build, from a strategy perspective, more things like sports and community partnership stuff in schools to keep kids off the street, so keep them busy. And also their families were in there, so there was no incident, but that helps them become more engaged in school and also helps them to be more into what we do in the school system as we provide them with more services. So that is just a strategy we've been working really hard on.
Mr. Godin, did you have any? Okay. All right. Well, before we move to Mr. Martin, I just wanted to apologize to you all. It started a shoe conversation up here, so we talking tennis shoes over here. Okay, Mr. Martin.
Thank you. Which of y'all had the best shoes on? Oh, of course. Thank you. When I first read this on the agenda, prepping for this, I was kind of skeptical. It was like, this seems kind of odd. Then I read more about Langston Galloway, homeboy made good, and I suddenly became much more amenable to the concept. I do have a couple of questions just to make sure I understand the deal and what we're actually approving. So, the Langston Galloway Foundation is basically going to donate the school system $30,000, which we will then use to buy $30,000 worth of shoes. Is that correct?
We will be purchasing the shoes. This is a part of the beginning of the partnerships because they're going to help us feel the need, and then we're getting the discounted rate on the shoes because the shoe normally retails for about $120, and we're going to be getting it for $90. So there's a percentage discount being given to us as a result of our partnership, and then there'll be additional work down the road, like we said, with the outdoor court revitalization, and then the access to the business aspect for our career and technical ed pieces, and then also working with the mentorship piece and having the students having access to Langston and other, obviously, NBA players and other people that he has relationships with to help them understand kind of the inner workings of how what they're looking at as athletics right now can actually take them to much further things in their future.
And so, as I read the contract, and I think some of the questions we've gotten from the public, it's written as a contract for professional services, but the only actual service, as I see in the contract, and Mr. Sandlin, maybe you can chime in here, is that we get a discount on buying the shoes, but we contractually obligate to buy $30,000 worth of shoes and other clothing.
That's correct. That's correct. Initially, the contract did include some of the discussed additional work. That's why it was for services. But after discussion with the vendor, we decided to hold off and bring that to the board at a later point once we have more specifics provided as to exactly how that work would look, the steps needed to achieve it, and the information for the board would be more detailed. And so we amended the contract to just allow for the purchase of shoes.
And does that then get us in trouble with any kind of procurement, any of our procurement policies, because we haven't bid out to give other people the opportunity to sell us $30,000 worth of shoes?
Yes, sir. Under state and federal law, staff is required to get 3 quotes before purchasing this as goods. It's classified as goods, and so I believe we've done that as staff. I checked in with them to be sure that requirement was met before bringing this to the board.
Okay. So then what the board is really being asked to do is make a policy decision that this local company founded by one of our school graduates who's succeeded quite well in the athletic world, against all odds, apparently, and support that endeavor in a way that is going to lead to ultimately greater contractual connection between us to whereby they're going to be allowing educational opportunities for our students and hopefully through a charitable foundation sponsoring some improvements to the schools and things like that. That's pretty much the size of it.
Yes, sir. That's my understanding.
Okay, I can support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
I feel like I'm back at the let's make a deal. Okay? You know, I've benefited tremendously from athletics. That's the only reason I'm sitting here. It's the only reason I went to college, purchased homes. I mean, my whole life was involved around athletics. Okay? But there's a lot of, Warwick Dunn, Shaquille O'Neal, professional athletes, foundations, when they want to give back, they just give back. They don't ask for 30 grand. I understand elementary school sports, middle school sports. I went to see my grandson play night before last, and I'm going to watch my older grandson play tomorrow night, and they're benefiting from high school and middle school athletics. I just think if you're going to give back, give back. This is like paying to play. And I'll probably get crucified for this because I've already made the statement that athletics was an extracurricular activity, and that's exactly what it is. Let's spend $30,000. Never mind. Let's spend $30,000 on professional development for teachers. I understand. And why are we charging kids in public schools fees to play athletics anyway? Why should a kid at Broadmoor, Terra, Woodlawn, anywhere pay a fee to play sports in high school? It's an extracurricular activity. They don't pay to go to math, science, English, and social studies classes. So why should they pay to play basketball or any other sport? I don't ever recall paying a fee to play sports. And we talk about there's an annual 3 to 5 percentage point increase in the number of East Baton Rouge Parish School stakeholders, participants, students, employees, families. How in the heck everything we measure is 3 to 5%. Are there any other numbers that we can find for success besides 3 to 5%? Every contract that comes up here has the same matrix. Now that may be a little ungermane to the topic, but everything we do is based on 3 to 5%. Are there any other numbers from 1 to 100 that we can gauge success on? 3 to 5% in every contract that I've seen for 10 months. If you've got a entity, you should have your own matrix to decide what's successful or not. Don't use our KPIs. Use your own. I love athletics. I went from playing in a 120-pound league to playing in the NFL. I just think that this is a hard one, but I'm going to support it. But I think that we need to find I don't think that we should pay $30,000, down from 50. I've never seen a kid in Baton Rouge in the 15 years that I was involved in schools come to school with a bad pair of tennis shoes. They'll find the money for them. Have anybody, have these kids seen these shoes? Because I'm telling you, they're gonna, if it ain't pleasing to the eye, they ain't putting them on. They're not putting them on. Three to 5 percentage points. $30,000. I applaud Mr. Galloway for all of his accomplishments on and off the athletic field. But if you're going to give back, give back. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lannis.
Yes. Well, first, thank you all. Appreciate you bringing a measure of this kind. The way I see it is when we did the cost analysis, the average shoe cost is about $150 for a basketball sneaker. I know you all already have a partnership with Liberty High School, and I think Superintendent Cedar Narcisse really spelled it out for a lot of those schools. If you are not a top-tier basketball school, you're not getting Nikes, you're not getting Adidas, you're not even getting Puma. And it's really hard for a lot of those parents to cover the cost. Now, I do agree, Coach, no kid should have to pay costs for athletics. That's crazy. But I also agree that no kid should have to pay costs for graduation, something that we expect them to do.
I agree 100%.
But I will say, I think this is a great way to give back to our community, somebody who has given to the Baton Rouge community in so many different ways. The court that he donated the time and energy into, that was actually them giving back. And that court, one of the courts is actually right around the corner at Gus Young Gym, where a lot of people don't even go to that basketball gym anymore because it's dilapidation and the way that it has been handled and taken care of. Since that time, they have been trying to revitalize it. But I don't want to go too far into that. I'll just say that the partnerships you all are doing, the schools that you did select, a lot of those schools do not have athletic sponsorships, one of which is in my district, which is Northeast High School. And even the other one that's in my district, Glen Oaks High School, which I wish would have gotten selected, even though they didn't, and I don't have a problem with that. The reason, all of those schools call me all the time asking, do you have any sponsorships? Can you give money? Can you give money? And when I tell you I give money every single year, that's part of the reason why I don't take the stipend from the school system, because I try to give that money back to those schools. But it's only so much money that can go around, and those students are literally standing on corners. I don't know if you all have saw like at a red light, they're walking around with buckets collecting coins to try to raise money for athletics, to buy uniforms, to get apparel. And those are things that I think that they should not have to do. That's just me personally. I'm not knocking anybody for their personal beliefs on this particular issue, but I think that kids should be just that, kids. We should expect them to go to class and learn. But taking on additional costs of things that they shouldn't have to because the school can't simply afford it, I think that that's something where we should be able to lean in. And on, I think $30,000 is a small cost considering what we're getting back. And I just want us to think about the return on investment. Everybody won't go to the NBA. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people thought Langston wasn't going to go to the NBA. But he has thrived because of that, because he had a system around him that supported him. And that's what I want to see us do. I want to see us corral around our students and do the same thing, because some of them may actually make it to the NBA. And you know what they may do? They may come back and they may give back the same way that Langston has given. So I'll just stop there. I love the philanthropic attitude that the foundation has. I've seen you all give back on multiple occasions. I've been to the gala where you try to raise money, and that's how you fund doing courts. And I just ask that you continue to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I have entered into the queue as well. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, considering that we are dealing with high school students, have any of them gotten a chance to see the shoes and the apparel, or have they tried them on? And what has been the response?
Sorry, we sent the colorway sketch and whatnot to the athletic directors and to the coaches to share with those with the kids. And so I think as long as the questions we receive are, do we have them in our colors? So that was the other thing we considered when we were looking at the schools is did they have it available in those colors, and they do. And so and the kids did wear them. Like I said, Terra High had them last year. So they've been seen and worn by the kids in the district. And we did not get any negative feedback on it after we answered the color question.
Okay, thank you. The other, I just wanted to ask, and I'm not sure if this is a question for you or for Dr. Narcisse. So based on the conversation that we're having, my question is, will the students have to pay a cost for the shoes, or are we incurring the cost as a district?
No, we're paying that cost. The students are not paying the cost at all.
Okay, so that's good to know as well. And to Coach Lewis's point, I agree that parents should not be having to pay for athletics. I mean, for myself though, I know I had to pay $500 for this child to play football, and that included everything from the shoe all the way up to the jacket, the shirt, just everything. It's a whole slew of items. Public school, yes. Right. So, and thank God I had it, but I can only imagine for those who did not, what those costs are like. And even if this shaved off a portion of that, by us being able to provide a shoe for them, I understand. Then lastly, my last question is kind of personal, and it's because of a lack of knowledge. So, Coach, tell me, what is a 100-pound lead?
In Florida, you could only weigh 120 pounds to play, to start off. So every Friday, me and 2 other guys had to go sit in the steam room so we could make weight. So
see, both me and Miss Stewart, Miss Chatelaine, I mean, I don't know if you knew the answer, but I know I didn't know the answer. Gentlemen, I'm just going to assume that y'all knew the answer.
Patrick, you knew what it was, didn't you? Yeah, Patrick knew.
I knew. But thank you. All right, Mr. Ballou.
Thank you. Coach Lewis had talked about measuring success or measuring performance. Can you commit to say a 5 to 10% increase in vertical leap by using those shoes? I just want
3 to 5. We cannot make that promise.
Give me a pair.
Right.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart.
No, I just wanted to comment on this item. It makes you think, as my colleague Coach Lewis mentioned about, the donation part, but I do appreciate you guys extending this offer for our students, because I agree to the point where, all children across the district should have, the proper resources and tools that they need to be able to participate in our sports, because sports does come with a healthy cost. As a previous athlete and, of course, a dancer, those fees were allocated to the parents and families, and so they can become real costly. And so in some of those schools where we don't have sponsorships and things like that, I think this is a good idea, and I'm in favor of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Stewart, we're going to go look at Capitol to see if we can find dance pictures. All right now. Okay, so thus the comments from the board. We will now turn to comments from the public. Dr. Fanning.
Thank you. Having young kids participate in sports is awesome and completely irrelevant to this item. The good work done by the Galloway Foundation is awesome and completely irrelevant to this item. This is a shoe purchase contract, a sole source shoe purchase contract disguised as a professional services contract with a whole bunch of irrelevant fluff that's trying to justify this. Furthermore, there have to be other sources of $30,000 to buy shoes for schools, perhaps a contribution from a professional basketball player's charitable foundation, not a payment to a professional basketball player's private company. Or there's the East Baton Rouge Parish, well, the Foundation for EBR Schools that this district subsidizes and apparently doesn't ever raise any money for things like this. All sorts of ways that you could make sure the kids that wouldn't get to participate if they didn't have shoes purchased for them get to participate. Do any of these schools charge admission to their basketball games? I'm guessing yes. Where does that money go? Does it strictly get spent on the extra expenses of managing those games? Think about whether you really want to be on the record as a board of giving an extra benefit to the people that coach these teams. I presume they come to work with shoes and shirts and shoes on. I'm not sure you need to buy $90,000 athletic shoes for the coaches. You should also be bothered by the fact that there are many more boys participating on these teams than girls. I think there's a federal title that speaks to that I'm not an expert on. So there are all sorts of problems. There are other ways to solve this that don't involve breaking as many rules as this appears to be breaking. And Coach Lewis, if something goes up 6%, then the strategic plan fails. I agree.
Thank you. Mr. Matthews. Miss Matthews. I love you, Miss Matthews.
I just want to point out, I wasn't going to originally speak on this item because I don't like to prolong the meetings with things that I agree with necessarily. But Charles brought up something out there. Bel Air is on this list, and at Bel Air, it is very difficult to fundraise. Benny brought up the cost at the door. The cost at the door pays for your refs and your the different fees, the court and different things like that. And it is very expensive to have that. I think I know this is basketball, but for like football, it's like $1,400 before you even start the game. And so you're not able to make money off of the door cost because you're covering the cost to even hold the game. So fundraising is very difficult for a school like Bel Air, where, we fight to try to get parents to pay. We fight to try to get the kids to, those kids are not going and selling wrapping paper. They are not selling cookie dough. Those days are over. So trying to find a way to get the help that we need in the high schools is very, very difficult. So I do support the item just because we need help for, these kids and getting them something that's beneficial for them. And I don't mind the coaches getting something too because, they're giving extra time. They're putting things into our kids, especially our kids that we don't necessarily want to deal with all the time. So I appreciate my kids' coaches. I can push them off on and be like, hey, Coach Wade, deal with my child because I don't want to deal with him right now. Thank you.
Point of personal privilege. Is this Miss Matthews? What? Is that you? Okay, good.
And thank you so much, Ms. Matthews. Seeing no further, okay, there is an additional public comment.
I'm Mary Ellen Slater, and I'm a parent of 2 children, one at Baton Rouge High and one at Dufrock. And I will say, as a parent of an athlete in a very expensive sport, I definitely see the need for this kind of support for our students. I wanted to reiterate, though, what Mr. Finney said. I want to know where the foundation is in this, because I do feel like the foundation should be the one handling this sort of work for you. Like, I don't feel like this is something in other school districts I actually was the president of the LSMSA Foundation for 3 years, and I was on that board up in Natchitoches. And this was the kind of thing that we went out to community organizations and partners to raise money for, in which a similar deal, just like we're talking here, where that foundation donated and kind of gave us a discounted price and all that good stuff, and we could really stretch those dollars. But where is the foundation? I know you have one, and I've been wondering that because I was looking for opportunities to give, and the foundation proved to be a dead end for me as a business owner. Where is the foundation? And if y'all can answer that, maybe that's not the solution for this particular instance. I don't want to keep these kids from getting what they need to succeed and enjoy their sports because, again, I know it's very expensive, but I think one of the bigger things I would ask is that we ask more of that foundation and raising money for these kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the public, we will now return to comments from the board. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Vice President Powell Lewis. Was there a memo to bring your spouse to work today? Or, excuse me.
No. But I appreciate my bodyguard being here.
Oh, she's so well behaved when he's here.
Sorry.
Don't do that, Coach.
Germaine, the topic. I got you there.
Thank you. Now, first to answer the question, which somehow or other this has suddenly become an item about the school foundation. As the board's representative on the school foundation, the foundation board is actively in the middle of kind of implementing a reorganization strategic plan. They've been working closely with the superintendent and his staff. Their primary focus on the strategic plan is raising money very heavily in academic areas, particularly early childhood and literacy, which are priorities of the board and the foundation as well. They also are generally easier things for us to raise money for because they are higher priorities for that. At some point, we hope to have a very thriving, robust foundation that has tentacles everywhere, raising funds for a lot of different things, but we're not there yet. So that's where we're working on that. In terms of this item, Superintendent, I'm going to support this, but when I step back and look at what we're actually doing, we have some schools that have where basically players and coaches get free shoes. Right, because they have sponsorships with even Puma. Was that a little dig you had at Puma earlier? Yeah. And that's great. I agree very much that it's appropriate to address the equity issues that come about. But I think there's a couple of things. One, in choosing to spend public dollars out of our general fund on some, but not all of the schools that do not have sponsorships, then we're basically making a decision ourselves that these, 6 schools or whatever, that we're going to help, the board, are going to help kids in these 6 schools, which may be indistinguishable from 5 more that we're not helping. We don't have that many high schools, but there's some number that we're choosing not to fund. And so they're not going to have sponsorships and they're not going to get money from us. And so I worry about the equity of that and what kind of precedent are we going to set if Glen Oaks comes to us and says, we don't have sponsorships either, why don't we get some of this money? What's our answer going to be? I've got a couple other, but would you like to address that?
Yes. So what we ended up doing was, so 2 things I want to bring up in terms of the budget. When we started 2 years ago, and Kelly Lopez can share this, we didn't even have an athletic budget we gave schools. So we started to do that process. I think it's about based on the number of sports. Is that correct, Kelly? So high schools get about, I want to just make sure I'm accurate, it's about $10,000 depending on what the sport is. So what schools had to do was actually raise money on their own. And so we weren't funding anything at that time. So the board graciously allowed us to be able to put that into the budget. So that took care of one issue. The other issue that we saw, Board Member Martin, was that we saw that some schools, partners were easily going to them and giving money, especially if they were top athletes and those things, and others. And so you saw those inequities. And so when you see the data Christina's bringing up, there was 2 gaps that we saw. One, you had schools that were struggling to raise money. And if they didn't raise money, you could see from whether they didn't have enough apparel to wear for sports or anything else. We had to rely on external partnerships, whether that's through a partnership with universities or whatever community partner was going to give money. And the second part was a struggle because that also, with not having, whether it's gear, clothing, or something like that, kids wouldn't participate because there's a whole notion of, I can't afford this, so I can't do this, so I don't even connect to go to school. So what we have tried to do in partnership with various schools is try to get a lot of that data and then say, let's start off with that process. From a long-term perspective, The thing that we do like with what the Galloway Foundation is a conversation we had about a return on investment long term, right? So this will help to open up that context because of the partnerships that Langston had with other NBA players and other stuff like that. There's a clear conversation we had, even though it's not a contract on it, but to make sure that we can leverage partnerships through that, because the NBA and other leagues give back all the time. But this is kind of like, you have to put some skin in the game to be able to do that process. And so it's almost like the same thing with BRIC. You're trying to put a return on investment. We have a lot of, athletes and folks who actually have come out of Baton Rouge that want to give back. And so we try to make sure we can entice them in that way. And if I could add one more thing for the, I don't want to put the foundation on blast, but I do want to say that. So please forgive me, Foundation Board, what I'm about to say. And Board Member Martin, because you sit on there. The reality, folks, is the foundation have stepped up to try to now create a strategic plan to raise money. And I give their board a lot of credit because we had this conversation since we came on board and trying to help them work in a mechanism to raise money. Most foundations that are connected to schools raise money, and we're a big school system. They did not have a strategic plan. Kathleen Sarsfield and their board, Padma, who's the president, had done a great job. Martin, you're on that board. They finally have a strategic plan, and they have in their plan have said they're going to raise $3 million a year as a part of their plan to raise money, which we can always allow them to give a report on what that is. The question in that raising the money is usually foundation money helps you for any project, but that has not always been the foundation's role, and that's been a structure that has been put in place to do that, and Board Member Martin has been helping as we've been working through with them. And so these are, again, just some additional resources and context of things, I hate to use that word now, but these are things that we're trying to put in place as mechanisms to help build in our community, in our system to do that. Because as a school district that has over 40,000+ kids, we should be having a foundation raising money to do these things. But as of right now, we cannot wait for the foundation to do that because they're in the process of putting those things together. So this is another, again, a future return on investment. We believe in the conversation when you talk to Sabrina Galloway, who is Langston's wife, who helps the foundation. Her commitment has been that because they've played a huge role in Baton Rouge in the city of trying to not only help with the work that happens in the city, but also their commitment to the school system. And that also will include things like, whether it's courts that they put back or those pieces. And so just wanted to give some context around that. I hate to use that word, but yeah.
Don't hold me responsible for all of his time.
Can I use a point of personal privilege? Because I did want to give some additional context. I know you asked about other schools, because we only have about 10 high schools. So I'm sure this is the reason why you guys,
so we're getting
13, why you made this election. Glen Oaks High School is already sponsored by Elite. That's a local, That's a local company. Liberty is also sponsored by Elite. Scotlandville, who is, since in terms of basketball, they have won countless state championships. They have Adidas, and Madison Prep, who's the same way, has countless state championships. They are sponsored by Under Armour. So just to give you some context, some of those.
So pretty much with this, we're going to cover just about everybody at this point? Okay.
The ones who don't have any money at all, any sponsorships.
That's helpful to know. I think there has been a flavor. We heard this from the public comments about this item and about the BRIC item that if I was a child in Vice President Lewis's class and I brought a bag of candy, started giving around, eating some, she would say, "Did you bring enough for everybody?" Right? Or do you just confiscate it and keep it for yourself later? But that's not an approach that, while we always have to be very concerned about equity issues and make sure we're not having the same group always not get candy, we also can't say we're going to do nothing until we can afford the top of the line for everybody. That's not realistic. I do, the other point though, two other issues I want to ask about, Superintendent. One is the issue of us basically paying for clothing for our employees, our coaches. Ms. Matthews makes an excellent point, but at the same time, there's a lot of our employees that go above and beyond, and we're not suddenly buying shoes or things like that for the cafeteria workers or anything like that. and so who probably wear out shoes faster than the basketball players. I'm concerned with the precedent. I don't want to vote against it. I'm not going to vote. I'm going to vote for it, but I'm concerned about the precedent that sets. And then I think the point that Dr. Finney made is one that is very top of the line to the entire country right now in terms of gender equity, particularly men's versus women's basketball in great particular, right? We saw in the Final Four how a few years ago there's a big protest over how poor the women's locker rooms and things like that were compared to the men's going on at the same time. And I don't know enough about all of our athletics programs to know if we have ladies basketball programs at each of these, but I would strongly urge us to explore that in a very meaningful way to make sure we're not creating a real gender equity issue there.
Yeah, yes, Board Member Martin. Just to add to that, we've been taking advantage also, like Angel Reese Foundation has been helping a lot with girls program. So we have a lot of partners in the city that are helping us to close that gap, but we still have a long way to go in a lot of different ways. Can I just add one more thing that I guess it's a mindset shift I would debate a little bit about. Sometimes when we look at investments, we think that these investments are ongoing investments. But what happens is on the return on investment, when you invest this way, it actually helps to save money in other ways. Right? So if we, for example, make sure more kids read, more kids engage in community and all that, they're off the streets, they're not, you're not worrying about crime or something else that happens. And sometimes I think what ends up happening is we don't see those interconnections. And sometimes I think the public doesn't see that. And so, sometimes you're just trying to start these things off. And as you get success, I think Board Member Chatelain said, this brings in way more dollars than you think in a lot of different ways. And so I think one of the things we talk a lot about is, how do we show the public these return on investments, and what are some other things that we should see happening if these programs are more effective. But that is a very huge mind shift in our city because we sometimes don't think that way. And so we think of if we make this investment, it's continuous, it's ongoing, so we're going to keep spending this amount of money. And so I just wanted to highlight that because we see that in our work a lot, whether that's through academics, whether it's our investments in operational pieces, or whether it's investments in other ways. And so it's just going to take us a while to get our community to get used to this investment helps in this area, but it also means we may not be spending in this other area. And the more engagement we have with community partners, the better it is. I always said this when I came to Baton Rouge. Baton Rouge does not have a resource problem. We have a lot of partners that invest in a lot of different ways. The question is, how do they fit into our ecosystem, and how do we help them guide into the strategies around what we're trying to get done? And I just think that we, from my perspective, sometimes undervalue ourselves in that way. So.
No, I agree with all of that. Absolutely. I think that as we work together on how how we look at these things, how the memos and things like that are put together, Coach makes a good point. We do see 3 to 5% increase in pretty much everything. That's the standard goal. And some things, there's a desire to fit every single thing we do somehow or other in the strategic plan and get in some metric in there. But the reality is some of the things are just kind of it's not that they shouldn't be done. It's just that they're not. This kind of contract is not easily measurable in an academic return, for example. And when we try to write that down and say that, it almost devalues using the metrics when we do. Right now, it's a $30,000 contract. We don't have that much time to spend writing custom metrics for this. I like President Landa's suggestion for or Vice President Powell's suggestion for how it's going to change the vertical leap of the kids wearing it. But that is. We need to be careful when we're using those metrics and not just throw something in there because it's boilerplate and that's what we do. And sometimes there may not be a metric particularly. It may be so speculative. We think if we cast the bread upon the waters and something will come back. That sometimes you do that. So I just add that for food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. I had entered the queue, but I waived my opportunity to speak. The question that I had in regards to the foundation has been answered. Okay, so thank you. All right, so seeing that we have had board comment, public comment, and board comment once again.
One thing.
Okay, I just wanted to follow up on the gender question. So we actually didn't, deny anyone. We asked all the teams, please tell us all the athletes that you have. So they gave us the numbers that they had. And I'll just put a little context to it because not everybody knows this, but I actually was a high school basketball coach. Actually, they win a state championship, just throw that in there. But historically, the number of girls that are participating in sports are down. So research, you can look at anything you want, it's going to tell you that. And if it would fluctuate year to year, and you have a big class, may go down, have a big class. But there's been a period of time where, people were kind of casting a bit of a shadow on girls playing sports. So your population of girls playing just dwindled. And that's one of the reasons why we do have people like Angel Reese and other, college players, WNBA players, really pushing back into the younger age of girls and getting them back into the sport and explaining to them the benefit of just being healthy and being active, but then also what these sports can do for you and the doors they can open for you. So I do expect those numbers to improve. So there's that piece of it. There's also the piece that sometimes girls require a few more pieces of equipment than boys. And so, again, if you don't have access to that, there's a tendency not to step out and try to play the sport. So we're working on that gender piece. Hopefully those numbers will be equal or larger for girls in the years to come.
Thank you. All right, we will now entertain a vote.
Please vote.
Fun fact, I was also a girls' high school basketball coach. I see you. What? I ain't won no state championship. We came in third place, though, in the tournament.
We have a plethora
You're wrong
of
for that,
fun
Coach.
facts going on here.
I don't know how to feel
tonight.
about that, Coach.
The motion carries.
All right, item 9, property appraisal, Woodlawn High. Consideration of a request for authorizing the superintendent and staff to purchase an appraisal of property adjacent to Woodlawn High. Is there a motion? It's been moved by Mr. Martin and seconded by Mr. Russ. Comments from the board, Mr. Martin.
I'd like Mr. Morales or somebody to explain. I presume, Mr. Shamlin, that this is on the agenda because we believe the contract's going to be more than $10,000, or there's a possibility?
No,
for
sir.
it?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
So anytime, I'll start from the beginning.
Okay.
This piece of property is owned by a family who expressed some intent years back that when the parents when they passed, that this property be offered to the district first, on the first refusal basis. In order for the board to even consider purchasing any property, we have to first have an appraisal by policy.
Correct.
And so this is on the agenda really because there's a letter that's been sent to the board and to the superintendent and board president saying, essentially, we have an interest in offering this to you if you're interested.
Right. So, but my question is, why do we need a vote to approve the appraisal? The appraisals cost, $1,000, $2,000, something like that. So why? I mean, I'll vote for it. I don't have a problem with it. But why do we? I want to make sure we're not voting for anything other than just agreeing to pay for an appraisal. It'll come back to us.
That's correct. It will come back to you. And my only answer to you on that is there are two reasons. Number one, it's in policy. Policy sort of says the board has to appraise properties ahead of any consideration. But secondly, historically, it's what we've done. So if the board wants to entertain a change potentially in that policy, we can do that.
The policy says, a lot of things have to be, the board requires 3 quotes to be obtained before buying shoes. Those 3 quotes, you don't call us up and we don't vote for permission to go get 3 quotes for that.
And Board Member Martin just wanted to highlight, you can always change policy.
Well, I'm more than happy to suggest that change at some point, but if I want to make sure we read policy the right way too. If it simply says the board requires an appraisal before doing that, that just means y'all got to get an appraisal done before you bring it to us in accordance with the normal contractual rules. That's the only question I had. Unless, Mr. Godet, did you have anything on that? That's fine. All right. I deal with the real estate LSU. I understand sometimes there's things you want to know is on the horizon. That's a good way to to get it. But that's all the questions I have then. Thank you.
But I do need to address that. The state and federal law requires the 3 quotes, and that's why we handle it without having to come to the board. I'm only saying because policy specifies that to be safe. Yeah.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the board, we will now turn to comments from the public. And this is on item 9, property appraisal, Woodlawn High. Seeing no comments from the public, we now return to comments from the board. Seeing none, we will now entertain a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Item 10, new job descriptions. Consideration of a request for the approval of the following new job descriptions as referenced in the document, new job positions, strategic alignment, operational excellence. Is there a motion? It has been moved by Mr. Gode. Is there a second? Okay, and it has been seconded by Ms. Stewart. We will now hear comments from the board. Mr. Russ.
Yeah, only question I had about this was I saw that we're being asked to approve some changes around long-term and short-term substitute teachers. Is this with the intent that we're going to be employing those individuals ourselves as opposed to through ESS? Because that has been a big point of contention this school year.
Yes, so that is correct. Good evening, everyone. My apologies. I'm sorry. Basketball player, so it's a little smaller. Okay, so yes, that is correct. We are moving away from ESS. We are in the process of final negotiations with the contract. We currently do not have a part-time substitute teacher or what's the other one again? I forgot. Long-term. I am tired. I've been up since 3 o'clock. So we do not have any of those on the books. So I want to make sure we're doing the right thing. So yes, this is why we're coming to the board.
Thank you. Is that move going to allow us to mitigate some of the challenges that we had with using ESS around teacher retirement system and employing
Yes, that is
retired
correct.
individuals?
That is correct. So we just pushed out our billboards for retiree teachers. There are some nuances and, a communication issue there, but we clarify that. So we are working, as soon as we're able to get out of that contract, that's the whole point of this. We're gearing up to take it over, hopefully in January or maybe sooner than that.
Okay, sooner the better.
Yeah,
I know
I
you
agree.
know that.
I agree.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Thank you. Ms. Hall, I'd like to get a little more clarification about the issue of retired teachers, because I'm getting a lot of emails from retired teachers who are very qualified, who would very much like to work for us, who are telling me that they're being told because they're retired, they will not be able to come work for us as substitutes. I'm getting communications from principals who desperately want to hire retired teachers, particularly for long-term assignments when somebody's out on maternity or paternity leave or something like that. So could you speak very clearly to whether teachers who are retired or who were previously employed by East Baton Rouge school system will be able to be substitutes once we are no longer with the ESS contract?
Yes, so there's 2 things that are very clear. You have to retire in 2010 or 2020. Actually before the end of June of 2010 or the end of June 2020. If not, there are some caps, salary caps that goes with it. If the employee works to figure out what category they fall into, and then they need to sit with their TRSL rep to make sure that they are not in violation of that. But part of that process is that communication standpoint. There's this gap, there's missing. We need to sit with folks and walk them through the process. ESS was managing that space and it becomes a little bit convoluted. And there are agency or of someone we vetted this information out to, contracted the service out to, so it becomes a little nuances. And that's part of the issues that we're struggling with, right? Because we do not want to deter anyone from coming back to work with EBR. We desperately need teachers.
So tell me about this 25% charge that TRSL puts on us if we employ a retired teacher for more than like how many hours a week?
20 hours a week. They have to be part-time. Yeah.
So if we were bringing in a substitute to be full-time, perhaps only for 2 months, but for 2 months they're going to be 40 hours a week, then that retired teacher would not be able to come back to work for us because we don't want to pay the 25%.
Yes. Yes.
Now, if they retired in certain periods, I mean, so you said if they retired before 2010 or before 2020, different rules apply?
That is correct. So we broke them out, and I could send this information by email to you all. But part of our marketing strategy is to pull out those two separate groups and to bring high-level pointers as to why those two groups are essentially important. Because honestly, we can't afford to spend 25% for each dollar for anyone that works over. Not that it's not worth the investment, but there are strategic ways to get around it. And it's about having that conversation. And it's the communication gap. That's what we're struggling with when it comes to ESS handling our retirees.
My concern is ultimately for the kids in the classroom. I understand I certainly don't want to pay any more than is necessary either. My concern is that, you've got a situation where a good teacher is out on extended sick leave and we have some great retired teachers who could come in and do work for like 2 months and then be done. And they could get real education done during that 2 months as opposed to cycling through somebody or having a teacher, the good teacher, come 2 days a week to keep them under 20 hours a week, and then have somebody else. That lack of continuity is very bad for the students. And so, to my mind, there reaches a point where the value to the students becomes worth paying that 25% if that's what it takes to get the resources in the classroom that's necessary. And so I want to understand, because right now what I'm hearing generally is we got a lot of problems with this. And we got a lot of principals who are having to bring in substitutes that they don't think are really getting the job done in the classroom, and they're hindered because of this 25% fee and our unwillingness right now to pay it. To my mind, that's ultimately a decision for the board to make. Do we want to spend that premium to have the better resource for our kids or not? And we would look to the administration to give us a plan to say, well, here's the plan that we think we can do all the great things for the kids without paying the 25% premium. That's great. That'd be ideal. But if we can't really guarantee that and we can get better results for the kids by paying a 25% premium in some cases for the long-term substitutes, then I think that's something that I would want the board as a policy decision to make. I would also want us to see if we can work with TRSL to make sure that we can look at perhaps not have it on how many hours per week they do, but how many hours per year they put in. So if we could put in 1,000 hours, over the course of 6 months, and then they don't work the other 6 months, maybe that's something that TRSL could be seen to see that teacher is still part-time. So those are things that I would like us to look at very, very seriously, very quickly, because I think this is a significant issue for the classroom experience.
Agreed, and I will do as much as I can, as quickly as I can, with as many hours left in the day as I can. But just a clarification, we currently hire retiree teachers. We do have full-time retiree teachers, and we can hire part-time teachers, retirees, at Title I schools if they have funding. So there's some nuances with that. So with ESS, the contract being negotiated out of the system, we're able to explore more options. So just give me grace. I promise I'll be able to fix it. But
if you could, I'll give you all the grace you need. If you can provide me with an email that covers a little of those nuances, because I get a lot of I get a lot of mail and phone calls about that right now.
Understood.
Thank you.
Okay, got it.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis?
Ms. Hall, are any of these jobs new?
Yes,
Did
yes.
any of them exist? Did any of them come into being after July 1st, after we passed the budget?
Clarify. Please.
Dr. Narcisse?
Yeah, the question.
Okay, let me put it like, were these people, all these people, were they in the budget for this school year?
Yes, so there are people in the budget for this school year, but they're in the wrong title.
They're in the wrong title.
Yes. So let me give a little history, if I can. Oh, I'm sorry.
In terms of the job description.
That is correct.
Mhm.
So we have 41,000 job title in GEMS right now, 41,000. We have 6,000 job descriptions. Most of them are not board approved. And it's because of the fear of coming to the board to ask for approval process. So we make things up back there, okay? So we're really trying to do the right thing because now we have the city suite that's coming on board with Kildare. And eventually we want to make sure whatever information we're putting into the system is the correct information. So we do have, thank you, we do have a new job description. So the ones that I submitted today, there are people in positions with the wrong title. They're not in the right title, operating in the right title.
So,
go ahead, Doc.
Coach, let me address, you may be referring to a specific job title. We sent the board a list of which were new in the budget, and we had to actually resubmit to you guys because in one of the general fund, there were job titles, and then there's one that was actually referring to that. But that's not actually on this list for new job descriptions.
I'll look at the email again.
Yeah, so and you'll see that because I think in the table we told you which one was funded and which one was there. And there was a mistake on the last one, so we resubmitted because that did not come from the general fund, it came from the federal funds. We actually had a movement, I can give you more specifics
So
on
that was,
Yeah, so there was a,
you referring to the last name on the list?
that's correct.
Mr. Collins.
Yes, that's correct. And just to give you clarity without getting more specifics, the way that happened was a person that was in that federal position went and took a teacher job, which opened up that position, and so that's where that fund came from. We can show you that.
So all these jobs already existed?
Yes, so
Except for the last two?
Yeah, so if you look at this particular list, there's two things that connect to the new job descriptions. And Nick, let me make sure I'm explaining this correctly. One is, what people don't see is the job titles also are linked to salaries. And so in the modification of those job descriptions, that they're linked to those salaries the board already approved in terms of the budget, because we now go over the budget based on what the board approved. That's where these shifts have happened in the job descriptions. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. And just remember, there's been 3 layers of what we've had to do. Number 1 is eliminate job descriptions, because we have like, what was it, 6,000 to 10,000, it's just a ridiculous number, which we've never eliminated. The second part was we had people placed in jobs in certain titles based on certain salaries, and so that was a cleanup, and credit to Ms. Hall and her team, that was manually had to do, which we're excited about the new city suite system coming in, because this should all be electronic. And then there was the third category, Nicola, new job descriptions, cleanup, and then...
And amended, so they're antiquated jobs that no
That's
longer function.
And the reason there's all these things is because, quite frankly, whenever there were particular job descriptions, it was historically not brought to the board. So that's why you had a book of books of job descriptions. And unfortunately, we are cleaning that up. With a new system, you'll just see all these links together. But in order for that system to work, you have to do all this cleaning. So you're not inputting into the, right? You're inputting garbage to get back garbage. And what's unfortunate is we have to do the cleanup.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Gode.
Yeah, I'll be brief because I think Dr. Narcisse and Ms. Hall just covered what I was going to say. A lot of this is related to us moving to the new integrated system where payroll and HR and finance and things will all be on the same system. And like you said, for years, this district went, whenever someone came in, they created a new job description and did this. And I think you said we had 40,000 job descriptions?
41,000.
41,000 job descriptions.
Job titles. 6,000 descriptions.
So instead of going and changing what needed to be changed, they just made a new one and left the old one there. And so when we go to the new system, we don't want to poured over all of that garbage. So there's been a tremendous amount of work for cleanup and getting that pared away so that what we bring over is what we actually use, because we got 30 years of cleanup to do. So when we come over, we can only bring over what we're going to actually use. And then from that point on, Ms. Hall has promised her tennis shoes that we will keep that current as we go forward, that we won't ever get into that situation again as we do that, which is critical for us to be able to really operate the parish. A lot of what I found as I got into the computer systems and things like that, and to me, a lot of what goes to the customer service and everything else, it's not that people weren't working hard. It's not that people weren't trying to do the right thing. It's just that we had this set of data over here, this set of data over here, this set of data over here, and a bunch of garbage in between. And so HR wasn't necessarily looking at the same data payroll was looking at because they were on two data systems. And with a lot of garbage put in between there. So you had a person with a problem on their payroll. It got very confusing for everybody, including the person who wasn't getting paid correctly. Because not that anybody wasn't doing their job, it's they didn't have the information to do their job cleanly. I'm just using that as one example. But the goal of this new system is to eliminate all of that. So when HR looks up an employee record, it's exactly the same employee record that payroll is looking at, and so on and so on. Not just on payroll, but across the board.
And if I could just add one more thing, and I just want to commend the board for us trying to get this right. Because, I can make a recommendation, you got to vote on it. But the reality, folks, is our school system has not kept up with 21st century on any system, right? So we've tried to do that, and credit to Amy Jones and her team on technology for kids. But, we are a school system of 40,000 plus kids, and we have all these schools. And so for whatever reason, historically, we just haven't done that. And so now we have to be able to do that and put these systems in place. So you see that impacting us in a lot of different operational issues, which cost us more money. And we have to spend this money now because we just did not keep up with that. And so in order for us to get to a much better place in terms of maintenance, making sure that we're doing systems better in place, it helps us also with how we think about staffing and all those components. We have to make these types of investments.
Thank you. Seeing no further board comment, we will now turn to comments from the public. The first is Ms. Matthews.
I absolutely love the long-term sub and regular substitute teacher. I commend HR for bringing this. I really appreciated Mr. Russ and Mr. Martin's comments. 100% agree with everything Mr. Martin said. And Nicola covered it, that we are going to be hiring retired and former teachers, or we are able to hire retired and former teachers. I do want to see them do it without the caps. If we end up having to pay 25% more for those few teachers that fall into that area, then so be it. We had a retired teacher teaching our Spanish class because we don't have a Spanish teacher. It's October. We don't have a teacher. Those kids haven't had a teacher all school year. So she was actually teaching them. The former Spanish teacher who is now teaching science was giving her the lessons. And because she's a retired teacher and she knows how to teach, and it's the first Spanish, and it's hola, verde, rojo, she was able to teach them. Well, guess what? Now they're split every day because she's not allowed to sub anymore. So we put 3 kids in this class, 3 kids in this class, 3 kids in this class, and they get nothing. I think they get some Duolingo. Yeah, they're getting nothing. We need to, I sit here at every board meeting and watch y'all approve contract. Say, why are we spending this money? I don't like spending the money, but I'm still going to approve it. I don't like spending the money, but I'm still going to approve it. When it comes to the kids, when it comes to a person that knows how to teach, being in the classroom with the children, that's when we spend the money. That's when there should be no question about spending the money. Yeah, there's so many problems with ESS. I'm really glad we're done with that. I spoke, in fact, I said, are they going to bring magical unicorn subs? That's what I said the day that we had that contract. I don't know how I remember that. We were at the PDC. I said, are there going to be magical unicorn subs that they're going to find? Because this contract is not going to work. I love it when I'm right. Thank you very much, Ms. Hall, for ending that contract. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Ms. Acosta.
Hi, I'm Laura Acosta. I'm going to keep it short because I'm losing my voice. I came here to ask about the substitute teachers. I had emailed all the board members yesterday and I didn't get a single response. So even though I don't have much of a voice, I wanted to be here. Mr. Rust asked the first question I had when I saw that this was on the agenda, if we were cutting ties with ESS, which we greatly needed to do. We lost a lot of subs because vested former employees, teachers could no longer sub, and retired teachers could no longer sub. I asked Kimberly, the district manager of ESS yesterday, why this sudden change. She informed me that it was a decision between EBR and ESS, and it was due to budget cuts and position cuts. Whether she was telling me the truth or not, I don't know, but I'm glad to hear that we won't have to deal with them anymore. I'm not sure it's been was answered. When can we bring back retired teachers and former employees, former teachers who are vested? Because there's a lot of empty classrooms right now. There were long-term subs who were teaching, who are former teachers, and they're no longer in the classroom because of this new rule. As Ms. Matthews said, the kids are being split up right now. Teachers are covering classes on their planning periods. We already have a problem retaining teachers in this district, and that's one of the main reasons. So I'd like to know when EBR is going to go back to allowing retired teachers and former teachers who are vested to be able to get back in the classroom. I think I may have heard January. That's too late. And I hope we learned a lesson by outsourcing and privatizing by going with ESS. Obviously, we learned that was a big mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Fanny.
Thank you. I'm happy to hear that the ESS contract is ending soon. It can't be soon enough. Hopefully the HES contract ends not long after that because it's also been a disaster. With respect to ESS, I've heard anecdote after anecdote that they are actively driving away interested substitute teachers. I would hope that is a breach of contract and grounds for immediate termination. In fact, this is such a big deal, I would suggest that you all ought to be back here sometime next week with a special meeting strictly to approve that part-time description, authorize recruitment of as many substitute teachers as can be found. You'll go through the entire list of people ESS has used this year and have them in the classroom a week from Monday. If you can't be bothered to meet next week, it's not important for you to have classrooms staffed. It's a really big deal. Okay, to the rest of the items on this agenda, it's time to abandon the history of 41,000 job titles. You should have an agenda item in 2 weeks that vacates and eliminates from the books every title that isn't currently assigned to an active employee or an open advertised position. And if there are any of those that can't be tied to a very specific written job description, then, no later than maybe the November regular meeting, you should have written job descriptions to approve for all of those. There is either statute or policy or both that says, among other things, the superintendent should maintain a list of positions. somebody that likes public records requests has asked for such a list several times and been told there wasn't one. That's a problem. And one more thing, and the reason that I would encourage you to bring this back as a standalone item in 2 weeks, you have new job descriptions. I think it's about half of these. And the job descriptions say salary, see approved salary schedule, but the salary schedule does not have those new positions. So what needs to be added in the next 2 weeks, which justifies it being a separate item, is the adjustment to the appropriate salary schedule pages that have those corrections or additions. So thank you for whatever you can do to get retired teachers back and quit wasting money on ESS, and let's move forward quickly rather than slowly. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hastings.
Good evening again. It's good to be back. I was not aware that this was an issue, and I couldn't help but get up and speak to it because I think we would all agree that when you know you have a teacher out for an extended period of time, the very best thing you can do is to get a qualified, if not certified, teacher in to consistently take the place of that teacher. And to find out that it's 20 hours and you're out means that students would have 2, if not 3 subs in a week, which is not very sensible, is it? We spoke a lot earlier about return on investment and then spent $1.5 million to recoup losses that our students face because maybe we're not doing the best jobs for them every year that we need to do. This would be another way, too, for us to show respect for our teachers. 25%? Are substitute teachers really making that much money that a 25% bonus or additional fee would not be worth it to rescue our students in their loss of learning? It makes a lot of sense to me, and I realize this is a really complicated issue with 40,000 things to fix all at once, but this would seem to have an urgency that would require more immediate attention, and I hope you'll go there with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further public comment, we will now return to board comment. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Vice President Lewis. When I first heard about this issue a month or so ago, I asked staff and I asked somebody to give me a ballpark estimate of how much we'd be paying in this TRSL fee for all the substitutes that we had, all the retired substitutes that we had. And I heard that it was somewhere in the ballpark, not holding by just a specific figure, of $500,000 a year, something like that. To me, I've had to vote for $500,000 of much more poorly spent money than that in the 9 months, 10 months that I've been on this board. I can only vote to spend money on items that are included in the budget or the contracts that the superintendent brings to us. But I'm getting blamed for, as a board member, for a policy that where somebody just decided, well, we're just not going to spend that money. That's what it feels like to me. And so, again, I think that's fundamentally a resource allocation question that should come to the board at some point with full figures and whatnot attached to it, because I've heard way too many anecdotes. Anecdotes is not data, but they start adding up. And I've heard a lot of anecdotes like Ms. Matthews, of the Spanish teacher being out, and particularly at the beginning of the school where we know last year and this year we had a lot of positions that were just not filled yet, and took some time for a variety of reasons to fill, and so I think it's really vital that we as a board have the full picture of what's going on and have the opportunity to weigh in on this. So that's my ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Gode.
Yes, Ms. Hall, could you come up to the mic, please? Please, ma'am. I think we're kind of getting lost in the weeds and getting lost in a lot of detail without clear information on some things. Okay. Bear with me. This 25% we're talking about, is that the 25% that we pay for every regular teacher to go to TSRL, or is that an additional 25% on top of what we would pay? Let me back up. A substitute teacher normally wouldn't be in TSRL.
No.
And so we would not pay that. But a regular teacher is in TSRL, so we pay the 25% to TSRL. Is that the 25% we're talking about?
The 25% if they go over their cap.
If they go over their cap, so then they start becoming like a regular teacher, which we're paying. So it's not necessarily a 25% premium that we're paying. We just have to pay retirement because they've worked too much more.
Correct.
So, yeah, I agree. We should be looking at and getting past that real quickly. Are we today, can we go out and hire a long-term sub ourselves today
We cannot because there's a clause
in the contract? Okay, I just
That's what we have
wanted to understand that.
renegotiate. Yeah.
And then, if not done properly, is there a way that a teacher who is retired could lose retirement benefits simply because? So the point I'm trying to make is all of this sounds real cut and dried. Go hire retired teachers. But like you said earlier, they need to come in and talk with you.
Correct.
Because there's a process and a way to do it. Because if they're not careful, if we just say we can go out and hire all the retired teachers, we may end up costing a retired teacher retirement money
That is correct.
by not doing it properly. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's a very complicated. If anyone has ever worked with TSRL, you know nothing is straightforward in any of that. So I just wanted to make the point to everyone here in the room and the rest of the public. If you're a retired teacher and you want to talk, and I agree we got to move on from ESS because that hasn't worked as well as we hoped it would. But please, you need to come talk to the HR department so it can be done in a way that is best for you and in a way that's best for the for the students. Because we want to have you, we desperately need to have you, but it's not just as simple as come fill out a form and doing it, because you can end up hurting yourself badly
That is
if
correct.
you don't do it correctly.
That is correct. So please email me or call me 225-975-9217 or text me. We'll help you, but I can't help if I'm not aware of the problem.
Okay, so all of you retired teachers out there, you just heard that. So let's please make her phone ring off the wall or buzz out of her pocket or whatever is the right term these days. But we really need to be able to get to. And I would say, in the past, from what I remember in the past, before we went to ESS, we had a strict limit of 20 hours for a substitute teacher because, and this doesn't require, I'm not talking about retirees, I'm talking about anybody. Because if you went over 20, then you automatically went into the benefits and you went into everything else. So the past HR policy under the previous administration was a cutoff of 20 hours per week, no ifs, ands, or buts.
Right.
And so we've moved from that by a good bit, and we need to continue to move from that. So I don't want anyone to think we're being draconian, and what we're doing, we're trying to progress and move forward and do the right thing.
Understand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lewis.
Ms. Hall, how much was that ESS contract worth? What was the dollar figure on that? Do you know
I
off the
think I
top
want
of
to
your
say
head?
$3 million. Is Kelly here? About? Yeah, about.
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I don't have the.
okay,
actual
but
number.
to what Mr. Martin was saying, is money not well spent?
So I can't speak against the. I could just speak.
Well,
on
I
the
can.
behalf.
I mean,
I know.
I don't owe TS. I don't owe him I don't owe him anything.
Yes.
So I think it was money not well spent. When we got teacher shortages, yeah, it's just part of the never-ending
We
chaos
want to
surrounding
include them
this
in our
building.
family. So that's the whole point. Like, we want to include substitutes, retirees in our family, our EBR family. So that if we could remove that barrier, which is the ESS contract, that will help us. Because we honestly believe, I believe in benefits and retirement. I want people to come work for us. We are a good space to be in.
And some of these teachers were willing to risk their benefits because they cared that much about educating kids.
Right.
Because this is not a profession that you go into to get rich, by no stretch of the imagination. Yeah. So, thank you.
Okay.
Just a quick point of order, just so people understand, the $3 million you talked about, that contract was set up that they got paid a % plus of what they paid out to the teachers that they hired. So it's not $3 million going to ESS. $3 million was the payroll that they paid for substitute teachers plus an overhead fee on that. So I don't want anyone to walk away thinking ESS as an entity got $3 million. They didn't. They got a % on top of what their payroll was.
I'm sure it was handsome.
I think it was like 10% or some number like that. It wasn't.
I'm just going to back away from the mic.
I'm not trying to defend the contract. I don't
Point
want
of
people
order,
thinking
can we get back to the item, please, and move on? Thank you.
Thank you. So, Mr. Lewis, was that it for you? Okay. All right. So we will now entertain a vote, seeing no further board comment.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. All right, we are now to item 11, policy and policy revisions. This is consideration of a request for the approval of the following new policies and policy revisions. Alphabet A, BC, BK, executive sessions. Alphabet B, DC, annual operating budget. Alphabet C, EBBC, emergency crisis management. Alphabet D, DID, audits. Alphabet E, EBBI, public health emergency. Alphabet F, EBCB, video audio monitoring of school board property. G, GBRIB, sick leave. Alphabet H, GBRIC, maternity and adoptive leave strategic alignment, operational excellence. Is there a motion? It has been moved by Mr. Ballou. Is there a second? It has been seconded by Mr. Lewis. We will now turn to board comment. Mr. Russ.
Hey, so I know my colleague here was just predicting what time we're going to leave. To his chagrin, I'm going to suggest, so I have specific questions and some possible requests for revisions around at least 3 of these items, maybe 4. And so based on that, I think it would be difficult to discuss all of them as a group with the limited time that we have with these grouped together. So I'd like to suggest I would move to bifurcate each of these items into their individually A through H so that we can hear them individually. Some of them I think will go much smoother. Some of them we may just ask and discuss and ask if we can send them without recommendation so that we can work on them a little more. So if that's acceptable.
So just to be clear, what you're asking, rather than bifurcate them, just send them without recommendation? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm looking right now to bifurcate all of A through H into individual items. That's my motion.
So the motion would be to take each item separately?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, we could do that, but it probably accomplished the same thing, just sending it without recommendation.
Well, it actually would be different because you could approve some that would go to the consent agenda and
Okay.
others.
Okay. Yeah. Let's bifurcate.
That's my hope. Some of these I think will be simpler.
That's good. I'm okay with it if Mr. Lewis is.
All right, so is that received as a friendly? Okay. All right, so then we will now separate all the items. And Mr. Shamlin, should I read each one individually? So we'll stop and
Do we need to vote on that?
Sorry. Yes, we need to first take a vote on the motion to take
Okay.
each item separately. You don't need to read them back in.
Okay, all right. Okay, so then, so that has been received as a substitute motion.
No, it's a friendly amendment to the
Friendly
motion on the
amendment.
floor.
Okay,
So now we'll take board comment, followed by public comment.
okay, all right, so still going through the process. Okay, got it. All right, so, Mr. Russ, thank you. Are you still in the queue? Did you? Okay, all right, seeing no further board comment, we will now turn to comments from the public. Ms. Matthews.
Just point of order, so I understand where we are. With the friendly amendment, what is the exact, what exactly are we discussing right now? What motion are we discussing right now?
We're discussing the motion to take each item separately.
Okay, all right.
These should definitely be separate items. But if we are doing separate items, could you tell us how we're numbering afterwards so we can fill our cards out correctly? Thank you.
And I guess point of information, Mr. Chamlin, so if we are about to handle each of the items separately and it's not a friendly,
No, it is a friendly amendment. Mr. Russ made a suggestion, well, he would have made a substitute motion to do that, but Mr. Ballou accepted it as a friendly amendment to his current motion. So
is the discussion currently about bifurcating the item then?
It's about taking each item separately, yes.
Okay. All right. Dr. Finney, you turned in a card? Okay.
I did.
All right.
Bifurcating is absolutely the right thing to do. It is never appropriate to take a whole bunch of unrelated policies, pretend they all just get a rubber stamp from you, and make a mess of the full board meeting. If they go forward as separate items based on whatever you do after this motion, hopefully passes unanimously, then when board members are badgered about one or two particularly problematic policies, they can be individually pulled without having to pull the whole mess and then break it up in 2 weeks. So this is absolutely the way it should be handled tonight and every month from now on. Policies should be considered separately. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments at this time? Okay. All right. Well, we will now return to comments from the board. Seeing none, we will entertain a vote, and this is a vote in regards to bifurcating item 11. Okay.
And to answer Ms. Matthews' question, it'll be 11A through H, just 11.A.
Thank you.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So we will now take 11A, BCBK, executive session. So consideration of a request for the approval of the following new policies and policy revision. This particular one is 11A, BCBK, executive sessions. Is there a motion? Okay, it has been moved by Ms. Stewart and seconded by Mr. Martin. Comments from the board at this time? Okay. Seeing no comments from the board, we will now turn to comments from the public for 11A. Seeing no comments from the public, we return to comments from the board. Okay, we will now entertain a vote, and this is for 11A, BCBK, executive sessions.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Item 11B, consideration of a request for the approval of the following new policy and policy revision. 11B, DC, annual operating budget. Is there a motion? It has been moved by Mr. Martin and seconded by Mr. Lewis. Comments from the board, Mr. Martin.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask council, what's the basis for this change? I know we're going to be studying the budget process in a great deal. My general understanding from previous conversations that just about all of these amendments today are to accommodate recent changes in the law, but could you clarify specifically for the operating budget, is that what this is?
Yes, sir. So there's one aspect of this amendment that's statutory in nature, and that's the requirement of the school board to post the budget and its annual summary on the website by September 30th of each year. That's a statutory piece that's required by law. The suggested language in the secondary part of the policy deals with two things. Let me pull it up. I'm sorry. Deals with equitable funding, which I know has been a question, as well as authorization, the implied authorization of a superintendent to spend up to the amount that's authorized in the budget. And so we'll take both of those. This is suggested language that comes from two places. From Forethought Consulting, who makes recommendations to us each year from a policy perspective, and also from council. There was some concern raised about the equitable funding language, and so I kind of inquired about why that was recommended. It's my understanding that some school boards in the state, several school boards in the state, who dealt with federal audits had some questions around whether they equitably used their Title I funding in the way it was supposed to be used. So the recommendation of council was to the state, basically statewide recommendation of school boards to adopt language that kind of spoke to equitable funding across the board. So that was the drive there. The other recommended language, which deals kind of with the idea that the board creates a budget, the superintendent and staff are authorized to incur debt and spend up to the limits of that budget. There was no real legislative concern there, and there was actually, I couldn't get any real direction on why the recommendation came, other than to clarify that the board approves budgets, the superintendent spends. And so it's just additional language to kind of clarify that relationship. That's the information was given to me by special counsel. And so those two pieces are not legislative in nature, they're just suggested language.
So particularly with the daily operations piece, the last sentence of that section says the superintendent and the business manager have the authority to enter into routine and necessary contracts or agreements to carry out the general business operations of the school board. Would that fundamentally change the $10,000 threshold that we currently have in place, or is that embodied in another policy?
No, sir, that's embodied in another policy. It's our procurement policy, so that would not change. This is just additional language clarifying the role of staff versus the superintendent. I mean, staff and superintendent versus the board in the budgetary process.
Right, but right now, an important protection for the board's authority, and we all collectively want to change this somehow, but we're not trying to make a big decision to change that tonight, is right now an important protection for the board's authority is that $10,000 limitation. So
that's
that,
correct.
The BRYC contracts and things like that have to come to us, even if it's been approved in even if the budget has that amount. So what you're telling me is our council is that voting for that language will not change that $10,000 threshold of what has to come to the board.
That is correct. And for further clarification, I actually raised that question with my counsel because I had the same, I wouldn't say concern, but I needed to make sure that that was indeed the fact, and that is indeed the fact.
Okay. Let me see if I have anything else. That's, I think that's all the questions I have right now. I may have more after the public comment.
Thank you. Mr. Russ.
Yeah, thanks. My question on this policy is specifically around the clause with daily operations. Did we really have no policy that specified the superintendent had this authority anywhere else in policy?
Well, it's actually, that's a good question. It's actually, state law speaks about the budgeting responsibility of the board and the superintendent. Okay. We have policy on budgeting. I don't have it in front of me. You're challenging me, so I'd have to pull it up. We do have policy on budget that kind of mirrors state law, and it clarifies the relationship of the board to the superintendent and staff and budgeting. So I think to answer your question, Mr. Russ, this language is optional.
Okay.
It's not required.
Well,
so.
That was my biggest head scratcher is, my education as a board member was that the superintendent is granted this authority, but I think that likely it's coming from state statute, and it's just not, if it's not reflected in our policy, then it makes sense that it needs to be in our policy. That was That was my question around that. With the assurance of equitable funding, this clause that's been added, while I don't disagree that that we intend to equitably fund students across our school system, my issue with this is that it does little to describe what that is. And my concern is that a policy like this could come back to bite us a little bit when there's no definition of what equitable funding is. And that is very much left to interpretation. And I'm not a lawyer, but I don't feel good putting my name on this when that is a common conversation in every circle of education is equitable funding. And that is because it is very much subjective and specific to situations and what's going on. We talked about it a lot tonight. Would what we did tonight fit that scenario? Could someone challenge that if we put this into our policy? Would we be, routinely breaking our own policy if we put this into policy? So seeing that this does not answer any state statute, my suggestion would be to remove this clause from the policy. I know that Mr. Shamlin I had asked a question about this. He had prepared this ahead of time without this clause, and I would submit to send this without recommendation with that removed. If I can get a second on that.
And if I can make a suggestion, Mr. Rust, we could upload after tonight or at the end of this meeting that second version so the board can see it and the public before the regular meeting. And we can also have some discussions over the next 2 weeks about whether that's appropriate.
That would be great. I just want to discuss it as a board and go in, open-eyed about what we're deciding to put into board policy.
I'll happily accept that as a friendly, I think I'm the one that made the motion, I think, on this one. I'll happily accept that as a friendly amendment to send to the full board without recommendation.
Okay, and,
Mr. Lewis was a second, so
right,
you approve, yes.
okay. All right, so that was board comment on item 11B, DC, annual operating budget, and the substitute motion or the friendly has been to send this item to the full board without recommendation. Is that correct, Mr. Shamlin?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Okay, so seeing no further board comment, we will now turn to comments from the public. Seeing no comments from the public, we will now return to comments from the board. And this is in regards to sending item 11B to the full board meeting without recommendation. Okay, seeing none, we will entertain a vote.
Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you. We're now to item 11C, EBBC, consideration of a request for the approval of the following new policy and policy revision, EBBC, Emergency Crisis Management. Is there a motion? It has been moved by Mr. Russ and seconded by Mr. Ballou. Comments from the board. Mr. Russ.
Okay, so I haven't had as much time as I would like to do my homework on this one, but I want to talk about some potential changes to this item as well. When I researched the statute from the Louisiana state government that required, and Bessie required, that we adopt policies around the essentially COVID-specific policies, right? And especially around when schools would be reopened and how. There was an expiration date provided on that. So at this point, and again, I'm asking our council, this existing COVID-19 public health emergency policy is essentially expired at this point.
Point of order, excuse me. I believe the item we're on is Emergency Crisis Management C. And I believe, Mr. Rush, I think your concern that you're expressing is more about the public health emergency issue, which is E.
I got them mixed up. I'll save that then.
Thank you. I'm sure it was pretty easy. Okay.
But I do know the question that's coming, so I'll try to be prepared.
Okay. Mr. Martin.
Thank you. Thank you. I've skimmed through this like Mr. Russ with the other one. I haven't had as much time to research as I did like. Is this also just to deal with changes in legislation, or is this a result of some committee working, making recommendations, or what?
It's my understanding this is actually, a lot of these changes are legislative in nature, like defines crisis management team. There's several clarifications around what a team is, what a plan is, et cetera. It's my understanding primarily that's statutory and just to make the policy tighter. I could look into how much of that is actually legislative in nature versus recommendation from a committee. But there are legislative requirements sprinkled throughout.
Thank you. I think, and this is an issue that you and I discussed at one of the recent meetings. On page 2, there's language that basically states that a person acting in good faith, administering aid, shall be immune from criminal and civil liability unless they're really, really bad. We, as I think we came to agreement, we as a board can't grant anybody immunity from criminal or civil liability. That is what the statute says, and so I'd encourage us in this policy and others and I get the idea it's helpful to put in the policy so our employees reading it can see that and get that reassurance, but I would like for it to clearly state that, right? The state law, and just say something like state law provides that a person, and particularly when it's something as important as whether somebody's immune from liability, to perhaps put the statutory citation in there, lest a judge one day think that we were putting on airs, granting ourselves authority to give away immunity.
Yeah. Mr. Martin, I don't want to overspeak. I think it's statutorily based. I think that immunity, but what I will do is cite the statute. We can amend it. If you want to send it without recommendation, we can certainly edit that to make it clearer, if that's the case.
If I could ask her for a friendly amendment to send this without recommendation for that change to be made. Mr. Rush, you made the motion. You okay with that? Thank you.
You made the second.
Okay. So that was a friendly amendment that item 11C, EBBC, Emergency Crisis Management, would be sent to the full board without recommendation. And we will continue comments from the board. Seeing no further comments from the board, comments from the public on item 11C.
Did I number it wrong?
You have 11D, but you want to speak? Come on, Ms. Matthews.
Okay, so this is saying that the doors have to be locked. I do believe that's legislature. However, we might want to make sure all of our doors lock, shut, stay shut, work. That'd be beneficial, before passing policy. And also, principals, when they request keys, especially like with our elementaries that have multiple buildings or outside doors, and the principals request the keys for the teachers so that they can get into the building after recess and things of that nature, are being told no. The teachers who have to pass background checks and, are being trusted with the lives of, 20 some odd, 26 some odd little ones, aren't being trusted with a key to get back into the building in which they work. That's ridiculous. You should have a key to your room. If there is an active shooter and you're faced with all the doors locked, what you gonna do if you don't have a key to get into the building? It's ridiculous. Why are the principals being told no when you have that situation? That was a teacher sent me that tonight while I was sitting here. that the teachers at their school have been told no. Now, the night crew has access, has a key to every classroom. I don't know if they got background checks, but they got keys to every room. But the teachers, no, we can't let them have keys to their own classroom.
Thank you. Seeing no further comment, no further public comment, we now return to comments from the board. And this is in regards to 11C, EBBC, Emergency Crisis Management Plan, and it's to be sent to the full board without recommendation. Okay, seeing none, we will entertain a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Item 11D, consideration of a request for the approval of the following new policy and policy revision. Item 11D, DID audits. Is there a motion? It has been moved by Mr. Ballou. Is there a second? It's been seconded by Mr. Russ. Comments from the board? Seeing no comments from the board, we will now turn to comments from the public. Okay. Seeing no comments from the public, we now return to comments from the board. Seeing none, we will entertain a vote.
Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Item 11E, consideration of a request for the approval of the following new policy and policy revision. 11E, EBBI, Public Health Emergency. Is there a motion? It's been moved by Mr. Russ. Is there a second? It's been seconded by Ms. Stewart. Comments from the board? Mr. Russ.
Am I on the right item?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to pick up where I left off. As I understand it, the statute requiring this policy had an expiration. We're no longer required to have this policy, although the policy doesn't have an expiration. And so I understand why we might be updating it. I do think that it is smart that we have a policy that addresses how we can allow our superintendent administration to quickly act and react, but only in the context that the board is not regularly meeting or able to meet. And that is my only main concern with this. And in fact, there's stuff in our state constitution that addresses that. Even looking at COVID, there were times where there was uncertainty of how and when the board would be meeting, and we need policies how to deal with that because we don't know what we're going to face in the future. So my suggestion with this policy is to ensure in our language that if we're going to grant the superintendent broad authority, is the term used here, that it's only in the case that the board is not able to meet or not able to regularly meet, so that they can swiftly address issues. And I haven't looked to compare to our like crisis or natural disaster policies or things like that. But those may be things that we need to look at and consider as part of this if there's not policies to address it. And I'll say this specifically because granting a superintendent authority to act in extraordinary circumstances can be important. But if we're especially in a public health emergency and we remove the ability of the public to transparently understand the policies and actions that are being taken by its school system, then we're depriving them of a constitutional right. And so that is my concern here.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Vice President Lewis. I share Mr. Russ' concerns, and I'm also think that the language, Mr. Chamberlain, of the policy leaves some uncertainty and ambiguity. Is it a self-executing grant of authority, in which case, I think Mr. Russ' concerns are even more poignant. But what it says is the policy is written to say that the board, in an emergency, the board shall grant, not does grant, right? And so does that mean that before the superintendent has this broad authority, the language is, does the board have to take another step? In which case, do we even really need this policy, right? Because the policies, while they are guidelines for the board, they're not, that we can change them anytime we choose to, and we can vote basically not to follow a policy generally, if it's our policy, not law. And so if it does require a vote, then this policy would almost seem superfluous to me. And if it doesn't require a vote, then Mr. Russ' concerns are the more strengthened. I also think this would benefit from clarity over who, if there's a public health emergency declared by whom? Are we looking for something specifically promulgated by the governor? Or could the mayor declare it, and then that would be something that triggers this policy? I think that this needs some more work. Mr. Russ, I'm almost concerned that this needs more work or some more thought than can be done in 2 weeks. And so I might suggest whether this might be appropriate to ask to bring back to the CAL next month.
I'll accept that friendly.
Yeah.
Gwen, thoughts?
Well, yeah, sure. I agree. I want to make sure we understand the motion on the floor, though. Who was the maker of? Was it the maker of the original?
Mr. Russ was the maker of the motion.
Mr. Russ was the maker.
Ms. Stewart was the second.
Stewart, okay.
And they both seem to indicate acceptance of my friendly amendment, which is to refer, which is what, to defer this to the next committee on the whole?
In November, yes, sir.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so this particular item, 11E, EBBI, Public Health Emergency, we have now received the friendly amendment to defer the item until the November Committee of the Whole meeting. Okay, any further comments from the board? Seeing none, we will now turn to comments from the public. Seeing no comments from the public, we will now return to comments from the board. Okay. Mr. Russ.
Just want to throw in one more 2 cents on something Patrick made me think of, specifically as it requires who is declaring public health emergencies. I forget what state it happened in, but I want to say it was Arizona or somewhere else where a governor or somebody declared a public health emergency around firearms. And so, my point being, if we're not specific, this could get away from us and be utilized in ways that are not intended by this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Just following up on this, and I would encourage Mr. Shamlin and the superintendent to have conversations with individual board members as we work over the next month. But I think that goes to the importance of establishing whether this is a self-executing grant of authority or whether this is guidance basically to the board for what we should think about doing. If the board retains full control to agree that there's a public health emergency or not, for ourselves before anything is triggered, then that helps ameliorate the kind of concerns that Mr. Rust and I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further comments from the board, we will now entertain a vote.
Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 11F, consideration of a request for the approval of the following new policy and policy revision. EBCB, video audio monitoring of school board property. Is there a motion? It has been moved by Ms. Stewart. Is there a second? It has been seconded by Mr. Russ. Comments from the board, Mr. Martin.
Yeah, I'd just like to, if council or the superintendent could give us a little explanation for why we're adopting this policy. As I read it, it's a new policy that we're adopting for the first time. So just like some background on it.
Yes, sir, I'll speak to it. Yes, so this policy actually arises from, actually, these are legislative changes. One of the big changes here is designating audio-video monitoring and the records that arise from that, the videotapes, they're not videotapes anymore, digital recordings, as the status of how you use that with public records requests, whether they can be requested by the public or not, which they can't. That's a big piece of it. But because districts now moving more towards, for safety purposes, the use of digital media, video cameras, et cetera, for safety and security, there's recommendations now about what can and can't be done by district. For example, if you place cameras, they have to be in places where there's an expectation of no expectation of privacy. So you can't put it in front of a restroom or in a restroom or in a locker room, right? So putting it into the writing and policy gives direction to staff about how we implement video camera recordings, digital media, et cetera. I mean, I could go through the specifics, but it's mostly statutory based, but it's also recommendations going forward for the district in terms of operations and how we handle recordings going forth.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Seeing none, we will turn to comments from. Seeing none, we return to comments from the board. Seeing no further comment, we will entertain the vote.
Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 11G, consideration of a request for the approval of the following new policy and policy revision. GBRIB, sick leave. Is there a motion? It's been moved by Mr. Martin and seconded by Ms. Stewart. Comments from the board, Mr. Martin.
Yeah, Mr. Shanlon, were you able to do that research that we talked about?
Yes, sir, I was.
Okay.
I was able to go to our web. So we approved a sick leave policy in October of 2022, I believe. That language that you identified was in that approval. For some reason, it wasn't updated on our site. So I believe the base statute used for the red line didn't include that language. So what I can do, my recommendation would be if we send it without recommendation, we can upload the corrected policy red line with the updates, and that way you can see the current policy that's approved by the board and the recommended changes.
If somebody would offer that as a friendly amendment, I'd be happy to accept that.
I'll offer friendly to.
But he's the maker.
Yeah, you're the maker, so you can.
Okay,
yeah,
well, then, okay,
Okay.
whatever. Then I would like to do that. I would also like you, on particularly that paragraph that you and I talked about before the meeting, if you could go back and find the actual minutes of the board meeting at which that was adopted, to address any concerns there may be about whether that really changed things or whatnot. So I'd like to see that, not just when it was uploaded or whatever, but when the board actually adopted that language.
Yes, sir. I think Ms. Salas had a
Yes.
statement.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members, Superintendent Narcisse. On our website, every policy that is passed at each board meeting is under a section in policies that says recently adopted policies. So every policy that will be adopted, you will find all those new policies there. Once we have
collected a list of those. We then send those to Forethought for them to upload into the CAP system. But it takes them some months to get it formatted, which is why we put it on the website so that you can go back and easily see those. And you will see them listed by months. It may say September 2022 and all of those policies that were passed during that time. So you can go to the website and always see when they were passed by the board.
I understand. No, I appreciate that explanation. It's
Just
very
wanted to
helpful,
provide
Ms.
some
Silas.
context.
But I just want to look particularly at that paragraph to see when it was adopted, and I'd like to know what meeting it was so I can go back and look at the video.
I'll pull it up and send it to you
We'll
right
get
now.
that for you, Ms. Morton.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so just for the record, restating the change or any change that has been provided for 11G, GBRIB sick leave.
Yeah, I believe the motion by Mr. Martin is to send without recommendation to allow for edits, necessary edits to the red line.
Correct.
Okay, and we will continue. Thank you. With board comment, Mr. Rust.
Yeah, because I don't know what paragraph or anything about what y'all are talking about, I'm going to go ahead and ask my question.
Sorry.
Which had to do with, let's see, page 2. Under sick leave for emergencies, there's number 3, attendance at religious functions of the employee's faith not to exceed 2 days per fiscal year. So my question about this, I understand why that exists. My question is, does the certification of absence or any of those portions of this policy apply to that?
I'm sorry, Mr. Russ, can you, I know it's page 2, can you tell me exactly where you saw
Yeah,
it?
no, it's under sick leave for emergencies, number 3.
Yeah, so, no, certification for, and I'm assuming you're referring to certification for illness. That does not apply to that provision. It couldn't apply. I don't know how you would certify a situation like that.
I don't either, but that was a concern brought to me was this is under a sick leave policy, and the policy describes what you have to do to receive that leave through certification, and then it lists what these different, emergencies would be. But there's no, I just want to make sure this policy is not used against our employees or requiring them to provide what religious functions they're attending.
We can certainly edit that language or add language that specifies that no certification is required for that provision.
That'd be great.
And we can look at all of them and make sure there's not something else that shouldn't require certification as we do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Thank you. I know I've already been in the queue, but I realized it was not appropriate for me to have such a cryptic conversation with our council. So I just wanted to unpack because it's related to what Mr. Rust was asking. The question which was brought to my attention is that there's a paragraph on page 2 shortly above sick leave for emergencies that says excuses for employee absences due to emergencies and/or special circumstances must be provided in writing by the employee to the superintendent or his or her designee, describing the special circumstances or emergency which caused the employee's absence. And the question was asked of me is twofold. One, how are you supposed to take the time to certify an emergency before, while you're in the middle of the emergency? If your house is flooding, you're not going to be scribbling out a notice to the superintendent saying, hey, I'm going to be absent from school tomorrow. To the question that Mr. Rust raised about religious functions, and it's certainly obviously odd that something about religious functions is in a sick leave policy. That's the way it's been forever. No point changing it right now. But the question that I had, that I was asked is relating specifically to the paragraph about providing written excuses to the superintendent or designee, as opposed to just like the school secretary, and when and whether that was added to the policy. So just to explain to the public what we were talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further board comment at this time, we will now turn to comments from the public. And this is on item 11G, GBRIB sick leave. And of course, the makers of the motion have asked that we would send this to the full board without recommendation. And so public comment, Ms. Matthews.
Okay, I'm the only one that's allowed to die and keep coming back. Mr. Shamlin, you say that this passed. Now, I have had 3 strokes within a matter of 14 months, so maybe, possibly, I'm remembering incorrectly, but I was standing right here, and in fact, many of these same arguments I'm about to give you again are the exact same arguments that I gave that night when it was moved forward into a later date not determined. It didn't pass. I mean, but again, 3 strokes within 14 months, so maybe I'm wrong. So the paragraph that's in there, okay, if I'm in the middle of a medical emergency, I put it in frontline. We have frontline to streamline everything when we are absent. If you are absent for more than 5 days, you have to have a certified doctor's note, or this is broadening it to, you can go to different types of things, that's fine. However, Superintendent Narcisse, why on earth would you want 6,000 pieces of paper handwritten and signed? Like, that's going back in time. Why would you want that? That doesn't make sense. But if we're in the middle of an emergency, I definitely, if I have another stroke and I'm in the hospital, I can't come down to central office to deliver a handwritten note. That doesn't make sense. But I can get it into frontline. I can get the doctors to fill out the MedCert form and to do the different things that need to be done electronically. That makes sense. But a handwritten note, that doesn't make sense at all. The part about the religious, that's not constitutional. And in fact, because it's not constitutional to have to declare your religion to your superintendent or to your boss, that's one of the major reasons this was pushed off. I do have one question, because my executive secretary was told by somebody in HR that somebody that took a religious holiday, it came out of their sick days rather than it being the 2 days that you could take from the year without it counting against you. So clarification on that would be great, because we were always told you just got 2 additional days if they were religious holidays, and it didn't count as your 10. But came out of her sick days this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Finney.
Thank you. This may or may not be the opportunity to address something that got missed when you tweaked the donation of sick leave policy, because there was a certain longstanding employee whose circumstances didn't fit the change that were made. So perhaps you could make that improvement over the course of the next 2 weeks. But the main reason I'm standing here is to say that if Forethought isn't getting these indexed policies updated after every meeting, that's a problem, and maybe it's time to switch to new technology. Because a person should be able to go to the table of contents and not have to search a year or two's worth of meeting history to find what they're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further public comment, we will now return to comments from the board, and I've entered into the queue. Dr. Narcisse, if we can just provide a response for Ms. Matthews' statements.
I wanted to make sure that we address exactly what her...
In regards to the written notes, and are we indeed requiring?
I wanted to make sure that before we give that response that I just check with Ms. Hall just to see if there's any policy written towards that. Did she step out?
Can I speak to that? I mean, I
Sure.
can try to speak
Yeah.
to it until Ms. Hall gets here. So the policy specifies superintendent or designee. It was my understanding, and it's been a while, that was written that way because the superintendent is the one that outlines the processes, the protocols for how you do leave. And so he may not accept the paper himself, but he can designate the principal or the HR director or whoever the person might be in the district he so chooses to be the one that receives the leave. That was my understanding when it was initially drafted. It was more for implementation purposes because I don't think anyone expected him to receive every aspect of, everyone's leave personally, but he could designate the school level to do it or the HR office.
Thank you. Mr. Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, on that point, I think, we're all still new here, still learning how all this works. I know from my work on LSU policies, for example, that we say the president or designee all the time, but then that leaves when you say that in the policy, if there's not a clear place where all those lists of delegations are, then people get very confused about what's expected of them. So if these policies are at the level of detail that they tend to be, then it might be more appropriate in there to say, unless otherwise commanded in writing by the superintendent, the principal and the school secretary are the designees for receiving these, or to clarify that by written submission that the electronic filling out of the form is sufficient. Because once these policies get out in the wild out there and somebody reads, oh, no, the writing says the policy says you have to give a written certificate to the superintendent, that doesn't mean electronic. Then that's just up in the hands. So it may be that nobody ever intended for there to be a written certification that goes all the way to the superintendent's desk. But if the policy is not clear about what that is, then I can easily see how this language can be read that way by the folks in the schools just trying to get by, right? But not understanding and not what was actually intended by that.
We can look at the process. I mean, if the question is around whether it's written or submitted electronically, the reason I'm asking Ms. Hall because I don't know, I want to make sure what the actual language says, but those are adjustments we can make. I mean, what we always want to make sure is that we have a record that's in there. So, Ms. Hall, I don't know what but what we can do is, without getting into it, what maybe we can do, Board Member Martin, is look into that and have a response for you on a process by the next board meeting.
I think that would be helpful and to clarify exactly what is expected of employees in the emergency leave situation, because for really dire medical emergencies like death, short term, hopefully, you're obviously not going to fill out even the paperwork, the electronic stuff. But for other stuff, you might go on your phone and say, do whatever. Yeah. Is that all that's required, or is there something more?
Yeah, our goal is not to make it harder for our employees, easier, but we just need documentation, as you know.
That's right. I think it's more, my bet is that this is more about confusing language than anything else. But we're approving language, so maybe we can fix that.
And just as a follow-up on our end, we'll just get together with council and HR, and we'll have a clear process. We can make sure that that's part of the language.
Thank you. Mr. Gode.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to clear up one thing about that paragraph about the emergency absences. If you read the paragraph, all of this is meant to be after the fact, not before the fact, because it must provide in writing describing which caused the employee's absence, the dates was absent, and all of these things. So this is an after the fact notification, not a prior notification. So someone in the emergency room doesn't have to be submitting this in writing or anything like that. This is an after the fact. So, let's don't make this more complicated than we think it is on some of these kinds of things. And, I agree electronic some type of electronic should be acceptable, but I'll go back to the new computer systems we're putting in. Until right now, we've had no electronic workflows, basically, on anything within this district. And, like we still cut paper checks for all of our vendors, and all this kind of stuff. We are so far behind, and this is just another example of where we're behind and how we have to move forward. But, to me, reading the words on this is an after the fact issue, not a while you're having a heart attack, make sure you fill out your form. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further board comment, we will now entertain a vote.
Please, oops. Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you. We're now to item 11H, and before we go to this particular item, it is 8:48. Is there a motion on the floor for either extension or ending at our 9 p.m. time?
End at 9.
Okay.
I second end at 9.
Point of order, or point of information question for Mr. Shamlin. Is either of these litigation extremely time sensitive, or could they be pushed to the regular meeting?
One of them is time sensitive, one of the first ones, but we can probably get to them if we move pretty quickly. Yeah.
So it has been moved by Mr. Gode and seconded by Ms. Stewart. We don't have to do anything? Okay, perfect. Okay, let's keep it going then. Amen. All right, so item 11H, consideration of a request for the approval of the following new policy and policy revision. HGBRIC, maternity and adoptive leave strategic alignment, operational excellence. Is there a motion? It's been moved by Mr. Martin and seconded by Mr. Russ. Comments from the board? Seeing none, we will turn to comments from the public. Seeing none, we return to comments from the board. We will entertain a vote.
Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 12, litigation. Consideration of a request for the approval of the recommendation of Gwen Shamlin, General Counsel, EBR PSB, in the matter of Gregory Payne versus the East Baton Rouge Parish School Board, Berkeley Insurance Company, and Lance L. Patterson, suit number 637114, Division D, 19th Judicial District, Parish of East Baton Rouge. Is there a motion? It's moved by Mr. Gode. Is there a second? It's been seconded by Mr. Russ. Comments from the board? Seeing none, we'll turn to comments from the public. Okay. Comments from the board? Entertain a vote.
Please vote.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I hit it by mistake.
Okay. Sorry about that. Sorry, I missed it.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 13, litigation. Consideration of a request for the approval of the recommendation from Gwen Shamlin, General Counsel, EBR PSB, in the matter of Dr. James C. Finney versus Dr. Cito J. Narcisse, et al., docket number 733531, section 24, 19th JDC, State of Louisiana. Is there a motion?
I move that we send this item to the regular board meeting without recommendation.
Okay. Okay, so it has been moved by Mr. Gode and seconded by Mr. Baloo that we send this item to the board meeting without recommendation. All right, comments from the board. Mr. Gode.
No, that was it.
Okay. All right, seeing no further comments from the board, comments from the public. Okay, seeing none, we return to comments from the board. Let us entertain a vote.
Madam Vice President, can you give me the maker and the second, please?
Yes, Mr. Gode and Mr. Baloo.
Thank you. Please vote. The motion carries.
Thank you. Alphabet C, next meeting dates, announcements. Our regular meeting will be held on October 19th, 2023 at 5 p.m. in the Central Office Boardroom. Committee of the Whole to be held on November 2nd, 2023 at 5 p.m. in the Central Office Boardroom. Coach Lewis or Mr. Gode, whichever one.
I move we adjourn.
All right. Have a great night, you all.